Good evening. We'll now return to open session. The board met in closed session and approved the personnel summary. A copy of the summary is on the table in the back. In regards to item 6C1, the board met in closed session to discuss the appeal of the denial of the inter-district transfer for student A. A motion was made by Trustee Ford and seconded by Trustee Owens, and the trustees voted 3-2 to uphold the denial of the inter-district transfer, with Trustees Owens, Futterman, and Ford voting in favor of upholding the denial, and Trustees Lundgren and Anderson voting against it. In regards to item 6C2, the board met in closed session to discuss the appeal of the denial of the inter-district transfer for student B. A motion was made by Trustee Anderson and seconded by Trustee Ford. The board voted unanimously to uphold the denial of the inter-district transfer. I now ask for a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits.
So moved.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Do we have any public comments on the consent agenda? Do any board members wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda?
I do, I can't remember what it was. No.
No?
No.
I am wondering if I see Principal Sondheim here. I liked reading the WASC report from Redwood, and I don't know, I know there's a big basketball game tonight. I don't know if you're headed over there. If you have time, maybe if we could have that pulled, and while the principal is here, just ask him to elaborate on the WASC midterm report.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Was pulled.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Then I'd like
So
to pull
you're
that out.
clairvoyant, because I didn't know, but that's good. So let's see which number that, yeah. Let's see which one that is.
I did.
19B, okay. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 19B, with 19B removed for trustee consideration?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's been passed. Thank you. So let's stop for a moment. So when would you, are you needing to run off to your school's basketball game? I'll try and think of where we can maybe move your item earlier if you're, although you're yawning right now. So is that a hint that you want to do it sooner?
I'm not running off to my school basketball game. My son has a basketball game I'd love to go to.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you can help me figure out where we stick it in so that we get it
Yes,
a little bit sooner.
I think right after the public comment. would be good.
Okay. You don't want to stay for the board policy updates and things? Okay. Okay. Well, make sure you get that. Okay.
Violet, fill you in, yes.
Okay.
Mary counted them up. There's 670-something board policy. What? 767.
I'll look at the first 30.
Okay. So moving on, now the trustee reports, and who would like to go first? Anyone in particular? So Jacob, thank you for volunteering.
The mic. So this semester in leadership, each committee has added like a goal that they're trying to set to like that encompasses the entire student body. For example, I'm in the outreach committee, and our goal is to have more fundraisers and like community activities that allow every student to get involved. This is why we are having a beach cleanup day on February 11th. And we are also trying to raise money for Planned Parenthood by having Valentine's Day grams where the money will be donated. Each student, they can like purchase a little gram and send to their friend, and the gram will have a Hershey's Kiss on it and a free condom in addition to it. So we're hoping that this will be a great fundraiser and a success. We're also starting we're starting awareness for our February blood drive. So far, basketball season has been going very well for TAM. However, it has not been going very well for the TAM students. As you all may be aware, a few students at the Redwood game and also at an MC basketball game were disrespectful to the home team and to the players themselves. So since then, we have had a meeting with the students and the principal where Mr. Farr has expressed that when students go to other schools to support their team, they're not only going there to root for their basketball team, they're also going there to be ambassadors for TAM. So when they act up and when they do stuff that does not represent the entire TAM student body, it does make us all look bad. That is why in leadership, we are currently drafting an apology letter to Redwood for the bleachers which were broken. We hope that you know that the actions of a very few students do not represent all of TAM High. The junior class is about to put down their first deposit for prom, which will be in a year from May and at the Bentley Reserve. The one-act festivals, which are the underclassmen drama shows that happen at TAM, are currently going on and will be going on until the end of the month. And TAM High's mock trial team is taking on county this weekend and the next weekend, and we hope that they get to go to state for the 24th year in a row. Thank you. That's all from TAM.
Very good. Thank you. Violet.
I'd love to go. All right. We had Staff Development Day focusing on building community, equity, and racial consciousness, reviewing and reflecting on advisory and department work. Susan Martone is our new chorus teacher and has been awarded the 2018 California Music Educators Outstanding Choral Music Educator Award. We are looking forward to a semester filled with more equity work. Our midterm WASC review, decisions on our Bell schedule, and whether or not to continue advisory with our growing number of students next year. Our boys soccer team won MCALs, even though they'll still have playoffs and that kind of thing. And then our girls basketball team is undefeated.
Very good.
Okay, I'll go. So at San Ann, we are offering a new COM class with Troy, who is a counselor at COM, and he is helping us find different career paths and helping us select classes for college. It's for seniors, and getting us where we need to go for the future. It's only offered this grading period. I'm in the class, and so far the whole class has applied for COM in the fall. And in our ACE advisory class, we are prepping for different interviews, like job interviews, college interviews. We did a mock interview, and we identified what we should and shouldn't do in an interview and what we should say and how we should prep for it. 10,000 Degrees is coming in every Wednesday to help all the seniors complete the FAFSA, and we are writing essays to qualify for the 10,000 Degree scholarships for all the seniors. 11 students received 100% credit in R3 out of 89. 12 students received 90% credit, and 10 students received 80% credit, all in R3. And that is it for us.
Thank you, Caroline.
At Tamascal, the team teachers are starting the process to find next year's team class. Teachers have been going to sophomore classes giving a brief description of what the team program is. The team students are starting their placements for spring internships. The Pathways teachers are also finding next year's Pathway class by going to juniors and giving a 10-minute talk about what Pathways is. The Pathways students are starting their COM classes next week as well. Tamska had their all-school assembly earlier this month with all 4 programs, and it went great. We went over what a successful learner is. We did a self-evaluation, and then we walked to Lark Theater to watch California Typewriter and do a debriefing with the director, which is pretty cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so for Drake, we're beginning choosing classes for next year. We just had a bunch of course workshops so that students could go to 5 different classes to see what they're like and see if they wanted to take them next year. We are adding 2 new classes next year. We're adding AP US History and Biomed. So those are both really exciting, and I know a lot of students want to take both of those classes. We also are, coming up in February, going to have a dance called the Royal Ball. Our winter dances in the past have had a couple of problems with them. There's been pushing and reports of sexual harassment. So we're really trying to fix those problems. Some ways we're doing that is we're making the dance shorter. We're also adding security guards. And we're also adding lots of activities into the dance to try to make it more of a fun place instead of just a big riot of students. So some of the activities that we're adding is we're adding arcade games, and we're also adding a silent disco, which is where there's a separate room from the normal dance area, and a bunch of students are able to borrow headphones and listen. There are 3 different channels they can listen to, so that they can choose which song they want to listen to. And then everyone's sort of listening to different songs, but then still all dancing together. And then, so we're hoping that all of these things will make this dance better so we can continue doing dances in the winter in the future. I personally went to JLAC conference last week, which I found incredibly interesting. All the issues that were brought up, I took a bunch of notes on, and I'm definitely trying to review them and look them over. I also was particularly impressed with Senator Mike McGuire, who showed a clear dedication to involving students in the sort of decision-making process. When he came into the room with all the trustees, he went straight to the student trustees and basically had to be dragged out when we had to go. So that was really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I also went to the JLAC conference, and I just wanted to thank the board for allowing students to go. I got a lot out of it, and I hope that like more things that allow student voice to get out happen. So thank you so much for letting this happen.
Anything else? Oh, thank you all. So I think we move on now to the trustee reports. And should we start at the end and just work our way down? We're going to try the 3-minute approach again, but we're still experimenting, so take whatever time you need.
Okay, I will go fast. I've been to several basketball games, and I wanted to give a shout out to Violet over there. I did not cramp your style, but I was at the basketball game between Drake and Redwood, and you were right in front. I was there with my husband, and I was cheering for both Drake and Redwood, but I did not go over and say hello because I thought that would, not help your cool stuff. But I was at the Redwood and Tam game where there was damage to the bleachers. So I'm happy to hear that the students are taking some responsibility, and I was dismayed to see that happened. But in general, the sportsmanship was terrific at all the games that I went to. And I wanted to give a shout out to all the admin team. I don't think people are aware that we have administrators who extend their day to go to these games, whatever they may be, and I appreciate that. So that's one thing. I went to Redwood last Friday during 6th and 7th periods and just popped into classrooms. I wanted to tell the board that some of the highlights were special ed classes and academic workshop classes that I went to, and I was sort of wearing the lens of, I was looking at attendance because we just had that presentation at the last board meeting, and I was curious on a beautiful Friday afternoon, 6th and 7th period, what the attendance looked like, and I'm happy to report that most of the classrooms were full of engaged learners. So the special ed and academic workshop classes were especially interesting to me. There were just a handful of students in those classes, but they were getting really great help, whatever subject they needed. So that was good. Spanish 7-8 class I went to a freshman English class where they were learning how to conjugate, or no, that was the Spanish class. They were working on Romeo and Juliet essays and how to construct a good essay. That was terrific. And then I finished up my visit going to the biomed class where teacher did not have anyone. He had a free period, but he showed me the cheat sheets. He's got a cheat sheet Hall of Fame. Mr. Sondheim, you may not know this, but it's he has kept over decades the cheat sheets that have the smallest writing on them. And I mean, some of those words, you need a microscope to see the words on the page. So interestingly, he told me that the kids that spend the most time on their cheat sheets never refer to them. The preparation of making those cheat sheets is the main benefit to having them. So anyway, it's always fun to go on site, and I will be at Drake and Tam and San Andreas and Tamascal soon. I also attended a Golden Bell meeting, and we are working this year on trying to figure out how to honor our classified confidential employees. I may have said that wrong again, Lars, but Mary is one of ours down at the end of the table. So we're trying to figure out how to honor you and your peers appropriately. Then there's a Not Alone movie on January 31st at the Mill Valley Community Center, and that's from 7 to 9 p.m. I've seen that movie. It's about suicide, and I think it's topical and well worth your time if you can go. And then finally, I wanted to update the board on the strategist progress. We're generally on track with Whitehurst, Mosher, and Godby. We are in the middle of polling 600 taxpayers. That polling started last Thursday, January 18th. Godby and Whitehurst will be coming to our next board meeting on February 6th. Godby will be presenting an analysis of the poll results, and Whitehurst Mosher will be making recommendations based on the results of the poll. They are working in concert with each other, and so that is coming on February 6th. We have completed most of the stakeholder interviews. 2 remain. And the summary of those stakeholder interviews that all of us have done, and thank you, all of you, for doing that, will be presented on February 6th as well. And just to give you a preview, the initial responses look very encouraging. I've been told by Whitehurst Mosher that, in general, people have been very supportive of the district, understand our enrollment challenges, and are open to a potential revenue measure. But we will hear more about that on February 6th. And then our outreach efforts are the final peg here. We are continuing to define how we want to educate, inform, and encourage engagement from the public. So just today, our website was updated, and there is a special section for enrollment growth. So that is where we can point people if they want information, frequently asked questions, which will be evolving over time, and any information that we come up with. We're working on outreach to the press, the TAM community, and setting up a Facebook page. And eventually, we will be inviting the public to a board meeting to share their ideas. But again, we will hear more about that on February 6th. That's all for me.
Boy, thank you.
I don't have anything to add.
I know, I was just gonna-
I don't have anything to add to that comprehensive report other than to thank Laura for reminding me about my strategy in high school, getting through one of my math classes. Shh, I won't say it.
Okay, all right, try and be brief. I also attended the Legislative Action Day in Sacramento, and I cannot tell you how proud I am of our student trustees. I know some of you couldn't attend, but if you had been there, you would have performed as brilliantly as Maddie and Jacob did. You not only did us proud, but I think you also were supportive to the other students from the other districts by your behavior and your interest. And I also thank our trustee who probably helped give you some encouragement along the way. It was very powerful, and I agree with you. I think Mike McGuire is very interested in student voice and stakeholder voice, if you will. Very proud of you. And I hope that you will take up the issue of this potential to use the SAT as an alternative assessment. And I'm not saying that because I agree with it, but I'm saying it because I think it merits a lot of discussion. And I think you're the people to lead that discussion because you're right up against it. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get, as a district, we'll be participating in that discussion. I think it's through, they're considering that as part of the SBAC. Am I saying it right? There's a potentially using the SAT as an alternative. Is that correct? Yeah. So I think that's your issue, and I'm so pleased that you're going to be a part of that because I think it'll illuminate a great deal. I heard more discussion about pension. I'm not going to say reform, about the pension situation, and what I heard that was encouraging to me was a remark. Can't remember who made it, but it was related that our governor made the remark that he was going to pass on this situation to one of our graduates, and that would be Gavin Newsom, he said. So I was encouraged that this issue around pension liability and reform is something we can keep in front of our legislators, because it isn't all our doing. It started in 2007, when there was criminal behavior on Wall Street. That's me talking. And I don't think that's ever been really addressed. And we are being burdened by this so dramatically and so seriously. So I encourage all of us to keep these conversations at the forefront, because it certainly deeply affects our fiscal ability in the next coming years. Also, happened to meet with State SARB, and I will be going on Thursday. Want to keep out chronic absenteeism in the forefront. I think we are making some inroads. I think our clearly, if I may refer to the Redwood WASC mid-year, I was very impressed with that, and I hope we'll be able to talk about that. And then today, Chuck and I, it's our second day, and my second opportunity to attend the Beyond Diversity Courageous Conversations led by Dr. Lori Watson, and I can tell you that the second time around was even deeper and more meaningful, and there were many participants from our district who, it was hard, and we're getting used to talking about some hard, difficult conversations, and that needs to be our norm, to normalize the discomfort of talking about race. We need to do it, and we need to embed it institutionally in our reporting, I believe. I think but I think we have some control over making sure that our public reporting includes our commitment to race and the issues around race that affect our students.
Okay. I, too, was at JLAC. I had a slightly different, quite different impression, really, than Barbara did about the comments about Governor Brown. And the sense I got was that he's kicking the can down the road to the next governor and not dealing with it in his last year. But that said, there was some glimmers of hope in that there's a court case. I don't know who the plaintiff is, but it's in Marin, challenging what is known as the California rule. And among other things, if the state Supreme Court upholds the decision, it will turn over what is known as a California rule, which prohibits changes in the employer's contribution. Not the employer's, the employee's contribution. So while the employer's contribution is going up, the employee's contribution has not gone up very much at all. What else do I have? Looking at my calendar here. I went on a team day hike it's getting to be habitual, on Tuesday the 16th. It was a rainy, drizzly, miserably cold day. We went up to Cataract Trail. There's a swimming hole there. About half the students then jumped in the water. Hypothermia was averted, but we may need some mental health counseling for these fools who went in the water, but they're none the worse for it. And then the Beyond Diversity workshop. And I can say, I mentioned to Tara earlier, in my teaching career, I don't know how many diversity workshops I've been at, and almost all of them were next to worthless. This was exceptional, and I think it really gets to the root of the matter. That the institutions, the people who have the power, need to address how the lens with which we look at the world and relate to the world. So I was. It left me at once depressed that I hadn't had this my first year of teaching, rather than 4 years after I retired. But I hope that what is in the work, the learning that's going on in here can be institutionalized within this district.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. I don't have a lot to report. I did, as Tara knows, I had the pleasure of meeting with the executive director at 10,000 Degrees, and it was so nice for a change to actually sit and hear about all the good work that's being done. I get snippets here and there, and I hear about various programs here at these meetings, but it was such an uplifting meeting, and I was thinking that it sure be nice if at the board level there was times that if we had time, that we could hear more from some of these programs and dig a little deeper. It was very, very helpful for me to hear. The only other thing I have to report, I did go to Mary Jane Burke's kickoff, and I just wanted to report to the board I enjoyed it because it's I'm somewhat of a new kid on the block when it comes to this group, and I just enjoy so much seeing so many people in Marin County that have devoted themselves to the education. I met one of the former superintendents. I always get them mixed up between Bill Levinson and Bob Ferguson. I couldn't tell you which one I talked to, but it's just really inspiring that there's so many people here that still really care about our district, and I was talking with Chuck about it, that it amazes me that you and Barbara came out of retirement to serve on this board. It just says a lot about our county, and it's been uplifting in that regard. So thank you again, Chuck and Barbara. So now I'll just hand it to the superintendent to provide a report.
Thank you. Just a couple things to underscore the JLAC meeting on the 17th. A lot of the concessions there covered, as you heard, conversations around pension plans, special education costs, a little bit on teacher shortage. We did spend some time talking about the 11th grade alternative to Smarter Balance and statewide bonds. Again, we appreciate our students to be able to partake in this democratic process, and I know some of you have been into this in the past, and some of you will continue to have this opportunity in the future. Last Friday, you'll hear more about this from Deputy Superintendent shortly, but Daniel and I, Senior Director of Fiscal Services, met with county office staff regarding our first interim budget. Among the 19 districts in the county, we now realize that we're near the top of what's the so-called watch list. They may reference that shortly. We did share that at second interim we'll true up some of the items, although we still anticipate a large structural deficit at second interim. And we anticipate at a board level needing to come up with some non-negotiated items that will reduce those out-year costs. Lastly, on yesterday, I was able to attend, I think under the California Film Institute, a film called HBCU Rising, which was a film essentially looking at the role of our historically black community, or historically black colleges and universities through the years, going all the way back through really the 1860s forward, and again, the tie-in to slavery and how that precipitated the need for students of color, particularly African Americans, to need education they were not, and that was prevented from them during the slavery days, and how that appeared, and also up through civil rights, and how essentially the role of HBCUs in the civil rights movement, particularly students in college being able to get organized and being able to lead everything from the sit-in to, the gathering around a lot of our leaders during that time, up to really current day. And as we tie that into the Beyond Diversity work, the inequity that still exists in our system, really between HBCUs and PWIs. PWIs primarily white institutes. That they gave a statistic at the end that HBCUs, generally their endowment funds are on the order of about $30 million, compared to a PWI with endowment funds generally on the order of $300 million. So a scale of an order of magnitude different. So there's still inequity in the system today as we work around diversity and equity, not only in this district, but certainly beyond that. So that's all I got. BD training these last 2 days. I believe we have training now around Beyond Diversity for our parents and students. They'll be involved in that component coming up throughout February and March. So look forward to that. Next meeting will be on February 6th. 2 weeks. So thank you. Items, yes, for board communications, you should have the monthly enrollment comparisons dated January 16th, and then a letter from Tarina Mars, Deputy Superintendent, Marin County Office of Education, dated January 16th, regarding the first interim budget report.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the next item, which is public comment for items not on the agenda. And I have 3 forms here of people that wish to speak. If you haven't filled out the form, it's helpful if you do, but it's not required. You don't need to come in any particular order, but this does help us with the spelling of your name. I'm going to read some text before you come to the podium. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on this agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Each speaker is requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard for up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether some time less than 3 minutes shall be allotted to individual speakers. We can have 3 minutes tonight. We don't need to lessen that time frame. So how would you like me to do this? Do you want me to call your name, or would you like just to get up and get in line? I will take that as, someone's getting up. Thank you. So are you Mr. Crabtree? William Crabtree, thank you.
Hello. My name is William Crabtree. I own a home in San Anselmo. My daughter is a sophomore at Redwood, and I am in my 22nd year of teaching at Redwood. First of all, I would like to apologize to my wife, Jessica, for not speaking out before tonight. She is in her 21st year as a teacher in the TAM district. I'm here to talk about the incident regarding the Redwood Athletic Hall of Fame and my wife, Jessica Crabtree, that occurred in January of 2016. By any objective observation, this whole situation was preventable. The larger issue in my wife's Me Too experience is that so many leaders, from site administration to district leaders, failed to listen, failed to believe, and failed most of all to act. One of the questions that I have in the aftermath is, have the bylaws changed for the Redwood Athletic Hall of Fame because of this profound breakdown in oversight and responsibility? The bylaws basically state that the Hall of Fame is a Redwood administrative responsibility along with the bench warmers. And it goes on to name the athletic director and the principal as being on the selection committee. It also goes on to say that in order to maintain the integrity of the hall, the following criteria are established for nominations. Nominees need to be of the highest standard of sportsmanship, ethical conduct, and moral character. That's not what happened in this case. Not only did the Redwood administration fail to protect my wife when she informed them in January of 2015 of the sexual abuse she endured as a student at Redwood between 1983 and 1985, but they were fully prepared to induct this former teacher, coach, and sexual abuser into the Hall of Fame and honor him for his years of exemplary ethical conduct and moral character when he preyed on young women at Redwood. In fact, in the selection meeting involving this incident, concerns were brought forward about this particular nominee. So imagine, concerns were made at the selection committee. Redwood's principal and AD had a first-hand account of this nominee's inappropriate conduct, and the committee saw fit to honor the man anyway? The situation did not change because of any leadership from the TAM district. It changed because somebody else came forward. Somebody else came forward and you actually started to listen. So given these particular facts, why were there so many glaring shortcomings? Why were there so many lapses in leadership? And why can't that responsibility be taken now? It seems as though that leadership is more concerned in what they can get away with legally rather than doing what is right. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you that I'm sorry. Your time is up. She deserves the truth. She deserves an apology, and she deserves that somebody take full responsibility for your shortcomings.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Crabtree. I'm the person that he was talking about. I'm sorry I started crying. It's hard for me to hear the story and hard for me to go back to what happened. But I'm standing here to speak for a different reason. I'm standing here because at the time that everything happened, and Lars, I want to compliment you, I felt very supported by you. At the time at which everything happened, you know, it was told to me that all of this was just an accident, that my principal forgot, that my athletic director that I notified forgot. And since that time, I've come to realize that it wasn't an issue of forgetting. It was an issue of not believing. It was an issue of dismissal in the same way that we see on the national front. And it's just, my story is just the first story. It's the first story of many women who work in our district that are being ignored. Let me tell you some of the things that have happened since we dealt with what happened to me. There's a woman that's had condoms put on her car by male students. No resolution. Her voice not listened to. She felt dismissed. I believe she had to go to you to feel heard. We have another teacher within my department where male students were asking her, what does she look like without her clothes on? No support at site. I was called into a classroom of a colleague last May and asked to take over her class. She couldn't even speak. I was like, well, I have my class. She says, no, you need to switch with me. I need you to do it now, as her voice cracked. And I went into her room having no idea what was going on. And after that was over, it was during the advisory period, she told me that 3 boys, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, were watching porn on their cell phone in advisory, and she had asked them to stop, and they refused to stop. And nothing happened. We know of a teacher this year who got a voicemail of a student who threatened to sexually assault her. She was told that the site was too busy to hear her complaint. When you do this to women, you're telling them that their voice doesn't count, that you don't believe their experience. And when we look on the national scene and we wonder how the Harvey Weinsteins are made, we're making them. We're making them when we decide that the adult woman's account does not matter, and that whatever the male says, no matter how old they are, is the truth. What we teach our young boys when they make these mistakes, and they are mistakes, they're teenagers making mistakes. When we teach them, when we decide that they're telling the truth and we dismiss the women, we teach them two things. We teach them that a woman's voice doesn't count, and that as long as you lie, the man in charge has got your back. And that needs to stop. I believe that when we make it to you, that we're heard. And the place where it needs to change is at the site. And I'm here to ask that you, as a board, make sure that that happens. That you have to change your response at the site. It has to matter. And the last thing that I'll say is that a friend of mine, if this is all news to you, if you haven't heard these stories, then you know there's something wrong with how you're collecting your data. If I'm the first one to share these stories with you, then there's something wrong. And the last thing I'll say, a friend of mine had an experience where a student said some sexually inappropriate things to her. She works at Marin Catholic. And her principal, and above, the president of Marin Catholic, and management going up through the Archdiocese of San Francisco, they reached out to her repeatedly to make sure she was okay, to make sure that the response that they had was appropriate. And at the point at which the Catholic Church is outdoing the TAM district, I think you got a problem.
Thank you. Trina Mars, thank you. President Lundgren, members of the board, Superintendent Yoshihara. My name is Tarina Maris. I'm the Deputy County Superintendent with the Marin County Office of Education. And I must say, it's always my pleasure to come before this board. I know you all know, you've seen me before, and unfortunately, I'm here for the very same reason I've spoken to the board in the past over the last, we'll say, few years. There's been a few times. I think what's different about this particular time that I come before the board to talk specifically about the board's finances and, most importantly, its projection into the future and the fiscal health. And as Superintendent Yoshihara spoke to your structural deficit, is that I want to note that historically this district budgets conservatively. And as a county office, and we review all 18 school districts in the county, we review their budgets, as you're aware, 3 times a year, actually 4 times. We communicate to boards 3 times a year to share our analysis and our findings and our basic assessment as to your fiscal health. We've known historically that TAM has a conservative budget style and method of projecting into the future. The difference between what we're seeing with the district's finances this time is that there are 3 very large mitigating factors that are changing the level of seriousness that we see in your projections. First of all, when we look at your numbers across the next 3 years, we notably observed an 82% decline in your fund balance. So basically, you are spending down your reserves to the tune of 82% across 3 years. That is not just significant, it is startling. And if we would step back and say, oh, well, maybe it's just conservative budgeting, we also can't ignore the fact that the three mitigating factors, the pressure points that we see on your district and all districts, one in particular, all districts throughout the state are facing, and you've already spoken to it earlier, which are the pressure points that are caused by the rising pension costs. These are out of your control. These are items, this is an issue for which you are unfortunately the passive recipients of. Aside from lobbying your legislators, you really don't have any choice but to pay this rising cost. So essentially, the other two are an increase in growth in your enrollment. I don't have to tell you that, but it is a significant impact on your budget and the facility demands that places on your budget. So those three factors are really not anything you can control, but they are certainly something that is creating an increasing demand on your fiscal health. And I'd be happy to come back at any time in the future. Thank you. I do want to mention, I know you're aware of this, but our superintendent, it's been almost 2 years. It was soon after I got on the board. He went after two of those pinch points. And we had the budget study committee, I believe it was, Dr. Yoshihara, and the enrollment growth work that you did. And so we really appreciate you coming to help. And I know that he's been working with his team for the last couple of years since I've been on the board, pretty feverishly looking at all these issues and made some strides and doing some, making some cuts, but remaining efficient. But there's clearly a lot of work to do. So I probably have more of a question for you, Dr. Yoshihara. Is there anything you want to add or suggest to the board for a future meeting or anything?
Sure, and again, thank you, Tarina, for coming here tonight. We certainly appreciate the county's support and assistance as we move through this period of fiscal challenges. I think for me, in working with the board, we do have some groups that currently meet. One of them is an LCAP fiscal advisory group that meets just prior to each of the major reporting periods. We give them an update on the last reporting period, but also a sort of a forecast of what the next reporting period will look like, because it's close enough for us to gauge that and for them to be able to ask questions and for us to provide some clarity. We also plan to, like some of our neighbors around us, some kind of, for lack of a better term at this point, some kind of town hall or forum to educate or at least further clarify with our stakeholders why we're in the situation we're in and what's leading up to that. And lastly, hopefully at some point in the future, I think we've done this in the past as well, engaging our board in a workshop sort of format, and it could certainly be during a regular board meeting or not. That allows us to probe more in depth this time as to why that is and to perhaps propose some solutions. We do anticipate in working with the county office that by second interim, we need to be more firm in terms of our solutions. And so getting ahead of that with our board seems prudent. And to the extent that we can do that, I would suggest that to the board as well.
When is the second interim due? Can I be reminded of
By
that?
March 15th.
By March 15th.
Plenty of time.
Okay.
That infamous
Yes.
date.
Okay, so March 15th.
Yeah, and it's expenditures through January 31. So we will depend on the county or rely on the county for guidance as to which parts of the governor's budget they will let us include at that point. It varies from year to year in terms of what we can or can't include, but certainly with regards to that, there are some items that one could certainly argue are helpful for the budget, but to what extent we can count that in and whatnot. Second interim, we get better guidance in terms of that. None of that is included in first interim. So all of what you saw did not include any of the governor's, at this point, I would argue, optimistic scenarios. So we'll know that by second.
And we're always here to help. And Kate is working, my associate, Kate Lane, the interim assistant superintendent for business, is working very closely with Daniel, with your director of fiscal, and we will attend whatever forum or public meetings or workshops that you would like us to participate. Happy to do that.
Great.
Thank you.
And looking at Tarina's letter, the highlighted, really, and boxed in light of the severity of the threat of the district's fiscal solvency, the district's second interim report submission should include a deficit reduction and recovery plan. So we're going to need to have something pretty concrete on paper. And any kind of meaningful deficit reduction plan is going to look catastrophic. We're talking about jobs, we're talking about positions, we're talking about whole programs. I think we really need to jump on this right away. It's not something we can be sort of flip off at the last minute.
Agreed.
And it's going to cause an uproar.
So we'll look to you to probably suggest some times for a workshop with the board, probably February. Yeah. And like you say, we'll have to jump on this. So we.
Yep. Cabinet's already been in dialogue with regards to that. So.
I have a question. Tarina, where would we see a sample of one of these plans? I have no idea what it calls for or how one, what it might even look like, generically or specifically.
Yeah, there are several districts across the state. We've done it here in Marin, but several districts have found themselves in a similar situation, whereby it typically comes in the form of a resolution, and it identifies the specific areas of, we'll say, deficit reduction. It can either be, as I heard you described earlier, you're going after the temperament of your voters relative to your parcel tax. That's a hope. That's not necessarily a plan, so we wouldn't expect something like that. But let's say there's, it can be revenue generation or it can be expenditure reduction. So as a county office, we're never going to tell a district how to cut. Yeah. We're only going to make sure that your fiscal house is in order, because at the end of the day, I think I think one of the most important parts of every letter I write is relative to the reserves. And forward planning, thoughtful planning, timely planning helps to prevent that kind of drastic change and disruption to your programs that affect and impact students most acutely. Whereas if you plan over time, so you don't try to solve your deficit problem all in 1 year, if you start early enough, you give yourself time to sort of scaffold in your strategy. So a deficit reduction plan could be a plan that spells it out over time. Doesn't have to hit all in 1 year, but it needs to have a level of specificity. And the reason we like a resolution is because it represents a board commitment to it.
I can also add, Trustee Owens, that I have done these in the past. I'd be happy to share with you. I want to run it by Tarina to see. But in my prior districts and county offices, we've done, as she's mentioned, resolution level board commitments.
Great. That'd be helpful.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Get some of those to us early? Sample, what they look like?
Yes, I should be able to find those, yeah.
Really early?
We may have to have an extra meeting, actually, for that workshop, come to think of it. Right. It may not land. It sounds like our February meetings are pretty busy already, so hopefully within the next week we can figure that out. Look at our calendars. Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Thanks, Tarina.
At this point, I'd like, if you're amenable to it, to invite Principal Sondheim up for the WASC-related consent agenda item. So
Thank you. Good idea.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The item before you is approval of our midterm report for our WASC accreditation. We are on a 6-year with a 3-year midterm, 1-day visit term. And so on March 6th, our WASC visiting committee will come and visit for a day with the purpose of looking at what have we done that we said we would do 3 years ago, and what work do we still have left, and what adjustments or changes have we made to those goals or plans that we set up 3 years ago. This report will be forwarded to our visiting committee chairperson in WASC, and then we'll see them in March for a full-day visit. The report you see was written by administration. It was shared with our teacher leaders, our staff as a whole, and our site council, which is made up of all our stakeholders, for feedback and review. I would say 90 to 95% of the feedback we got was incorporated into the draft that you have there. And overall, our goals have remained the same in the 3 years. We're looking for student achievement at grade level or higher for all students, not just some students. We're looking at trying to build community and wellness within our school, and we are looking at trying to address attendance, both in terms of reducing the number of times students are absent, as well as making sure that when students are absent, there is a manageable way for them to stay caught up and achieving highly in their classes that they may have missed. So with that, I would probably open it to questions without, I don't think you wanted me to take you through the pages.
The percentage of low SES students doubled this year over last year. What accounts for that?
I don't really know why the number is higher.
All ninth graders?
I would have to look more closely, but it is, you know, we're, yeah.
Collect
the SES forms. Yeah, so in the past, we would do, SES is generated by free and reduced lunch numbers. And in the past, to get free and reduced lunch, you would need to come and apply basically at the cafeteria. Now what we're doing is we're giving everybody the forms, and if they don't need them, they don't fill them out, and if they are low SES. So we may be seeing a higher reporting than we've had in the past. We may not actually be seeing a significantly higher number.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense.
And so I think we'll see over time too. Does it stay at that level? What kind of change do we see? Yeah, Michael.
So one observation and a question. So looking at the statistics, the charts that were presented. One thing that was encouraging was the increasing number of minority students in advanced placement courses.
Yes.
I thought that's really good in terms of outreach. I'm sure that didn't happen by accident.
And we're seeing an increased number. We're still not where we want to be, but we are seeing movement. Absolutely. A couple of our newer AP courses, AP Capstone in particular, has both made access open to all, as well as made it a goal of their program to have the demographics in the class be representative of our demographics as a whole. And they achieved that this year with AP Seminar. In respect to our Hispanic and Latino population, we are still low in our African American population in that, but there is movement in the right direction.
Okay.
Thanks.
The other thing was, and this is the question, which is, I note that there's statistics with respect to participation in the ACT exam as well as the composite score, but I don't see anything here with respect to the SAT. Why is that?
So we're seeing reduced numbers of students taking the SAT and increased number taking the ACT. So we felt like it was actually, the data from the SAT is actually a little bit questionable in our eyes because it's becoming less representative of our student body. Either one of them is not necessarily representative of the entire student body anyway, but ACT is becoming more and more popular. So we shared that. The other piece that's worth knowing, and this is a 3-year midterm report, so it's not a 6-year report where, for instance, in the past we've included both. And we'll look again in 3 years when we do a 6-year report to see whether those numbers have continued to adjust or where they are. But we've tried to keep this to a concise piece, and so we've left out some data that may, where there may be duplication. So it's as much that as anything. But we are seeing quite a change. It's actually fascinating to hear about SAT at the state level in terms of state testing. But anyway.
All right, thank you.
With the increase in black students meeting the UC-CSU requirements, is that because there's a small sample size and it's kind of an unreliable
So I would say a couple things. I think small sample size certainly has an impact.
Yeah.
The fact that we made intermediate algebra, that we got UC acceptance for intermediate algebra made a difference as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now some students who are mathematically going through intermediate algebra, not regular advanced algebra, has now made more students UC acceptable as well.
Yes, but it didn't move the other groups particularly.
Correct.
So
Correct.
this group, so it can't be attributable
solely to that.
Solely to that.
I don't think so. And I do think we have a small enough group that we do see fluctuation.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why, for instance, there are other areas where we're seeing movement among the African American population, but I am always a little hesitant to put too much weight into it on the upside, just as we may see. I'll be more confident as those numbers, if they continue to grow over multiple years.
Okay.
And we're really only, if you think about, we were accredited 3 years ago. We're really in the third year of that accreditation. So really, we're looking at data that's 2 years of that work. So and given the type of work it is, we know that it's going to take a while to see real data that we can be confident in that we're making a difference.
That said, 67% is a lot better than 40%.
Exactly. But again, given the numbers, it only takes a few to jump you up to that level.
Laura?
Yes, Mary, I'm wondering if you can pull up the report. There's page 12. I wanted to make sure all of us saw that Redwood has seen a lot of significant changes, and they're spelled out really nicely on page 12 of the report. And I hope that at Tam and Drake we see that as well, because it's not often that we see on one page what's happened in 3 years since this WASC report was completed. So I just found that all those bullet points in a nutshell showing what has happened at your site, Principal Sondheim, is very telling, and that you have been able to move the needle on so many of these WASC action plans, I think is commendable given the change that you've outlined here. So I just wanted to thank you, given that. And then on page 29, Mary, if you could scroll down there, I thought that page was what I focused on. That's what your action plans are, how they've changed since this report was completed. And I'm especially interested in seeing how this, is it Humanitas or?
Humanitas.
I was going to make that a silent H. I like that you're monitoring and evaluating that. I'm curious to see how that's going in AVID and the advisory period. I've heard about that. And then the Bell schedule and student wellness. So that page I focused on and am curious to see, how that will be reported back to the board, all those points that you've outlined here. So I mainly wanted to thank you, and thank you for staying this late. A lot of work goes into this, and you've demonstrated that you're working on these items.
Well, and thank you. And it's really a work of our whole staff. There's no way, like you say, with the changes that we've seen. And this work doesn't happen. It is a whole staff effort, classified, certificated, administrative, to really work, and students and parents who've been supportive as well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, sorry.
I actually remember that I did have this pulled because I was so impressed, if you will, by the writing. I have read these reports for years and years. I was I had to do it at TAM back in the 70s. Putting this together is very challenging for everybody to make any sense out of it and want to stay with it. And what I appreciate about this is that it's so well written for this type of report, such that our parents, our community members can go in and look at this, and it very clearly, I think, shows the hard work that everyone has done and the commitment that everyone has behind the language in it. So that's why I pulled it out, because it deserves public scrutiny as well as public praise. And so that thank you. And
Well,
thanks
thank
to
you.
everyone.
And if I can just say, without sounding too whatever I'm going to sound like, you have been an English teacher as long as I came to the district. So to hear that And I am a science guy. So to hear that about my writing, I am feeling very wonderful.
Means a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? How about student trustees? Any comments? Did you enjoy the WASC report as well?
All 41 pages of it over the weekend.
And thank you.
Next, we just need to approve it.
Right, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the superintendent reminding me. I almost just said, thank you, have a good basketball game, and he reminded me. So can I have a motion to approve item 19B from the consent agenda, which is approval of midterm WASC report for Redwood High School?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And, I have to say to the student trustees, I am still getting up to speed about, I forget to give you the preferential vote, which I really appreciated that President Anderson did. And so, what did you say?
Former president.
Thanks. See, he's really helping me a lot tonight. You have no idea. I have one of those little earpieces, and he's telling me what to say. Any event, if there's ever anything that you want, you might see something on the consent agenda that's of interest that you want to have pulled. By all means, ask for it to be pulled. And if I forget and you want, just holler out to me. Don't worry about protocol that way. So help remind me to make sure we hear from you, because really you always bring a lot to the table. So thank you. So the next item, I believe, is Tara. And Tara, I don't mean to offend you, but as you get up, I'm going to grab another cup of coffee, and then I'll be sitting right back down. Thank you.
Do you want us to play Jeopardy music while you do that? So I'll be quick. I just want to, since other people have already mentioned it, a few things going on beyond diversity. This was the third workshop this year that's been offered countywide, and we had another 36 attendees. We also have 24 district employees attending a next step workshop, which is coaching for equity leadership. And that is on this Friday. It's a one-day workshop, and those are administrators, teacher leaders, and instructional coaches that are attending that. So we're very excited about that. We also did just open today the culturally responsive classroom workshop, which is also a follow-up to Beyond Diversity 1. That will be on March 9th, I think, March 9th. We made that available to anyone who has already attended any teacher who has already attended Beyond Diversity 1, and at last check, it was already at about 20 people from our district. So those workshops continue to be very popular. Again, those are all voluntary, and we already have a wait list of about 10 people for the next Beyond Diversity 1 workshop. So we're very excited about that. I am working with the superintendent in the county office to plan some sort of kickoff, potentially keynote speaker for August to sort of launch the sort of next phase of this work countywide. So we're really excited about that. We also began our SOAR work tomorrow. SOAR is the student version of Beyond Diversity, and it stands for Students Organized Against Racism. Tomorrow we have 14 adult mentors who will be trained by Dr. Lori Watson to be the SOAR adult mentors. We have 3 dates for the students. Those dates are, there's a date in April, a date in March, a date in April, and a date in May for this year. We are also hosting a regional workshop for students that's also run by Dr. Lori Watson. That'll be March 2nd and 3rd. And that is what they're calling it, a regional summit for racial literacy and anti-racist leadership for students. And we will have about 25 students and about 5 or 6 adults participating in that as well.
How are the students selected for that?
They haven't been selected yet. They will be selected by their site teams, and part of tomorrow's workshop is around Dr. Watson giving some information on that process, what her recommendations would be for that process.
Is there a possibility, you may have other speakers in mind, but her effectiveness, in my view, was so outstanding that if I were to be listening for a keynote speaker, I'd want to listen to her.
she's on the short list.
Oh, good.
And lastly, I did want to let you know that we have an ethnic studies course of study that is ready to go to Curriculum Council for review. There's the potential that it will run as soon as fall semester at least 2 of our sites, and this is something we're excited about. It's something that students have been asking for a couple of years. So that is my update for tonight.
Thank you, Tara. So I think next we have Kim Stifler for the Physics in the Universe course of study presentation. And do I see Todd back there, hiding behind there? And I'm sorry, I don't think I've met you. Are you Mike or are you Simon? Michael Wing, nice to meet you. I've met you, Todd. Yeah, so I just want to make sure I knew who's who. Thank you. Hi.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
So I have asked Michael and Todd to come today because they are 2 of our 4 lead science teacher members, and they have been working very hard on the course of study that's in front of you. So that's the context.
Okay, thank you.
Mike works at Drake, and Todd works at what? You know me. And the 2 other members of that team are Paula Berry and Simon McBride. So we're going to be short and sweet on this. We've been here to talk to you about science. This is to ask for your approval on our course of study. This is a presentation because it's a new course. Just to review, around 2014 or so, the state adopted new science standards comparable to Common Core. The requirements that are different are these 3 dimensions that are in the diagram in the middle, which actually really brings in some key knowledge and skills to science in a more integrated way. Requirements that we teach all students, all standards, more standards to be taught, and a much stronger emphasis on physical science and engineering. So we're looking at chemistry for all and physics for all, which is a big change from how we currently do business. These standards are articulated K-12 and will be taught in every public high school in the state. These standards are required, so this is not optional that we shift. And the good news is we're very excited about this shift and very committed to ensuring a really high quality experience for our students. These standards there are more of them and they're more in depth, and so therefore the requirement, the state says will take 3 to 4 years. We're gonna take 3 years. So this does expand and extend our required science courses by 1 year. The good news is all well-written courses will be likely to be UC Lab D approved, whereas our current integrated science 1-2 is not a lab science, so students have to take an additional year of science to earn that UC credit. They'll no longer have to do that because all 3 courses will be lab science approved, pending approval, of course. And the state has already aligned the assessments to these standards. STAR went away a long time ago. The little science test went away. We had a pilot of the test last spring. We have a field test this spring. We still won't see results, but the operational test will be next spring. So we're hitting it at the right time to kind of make sure we get this going. There ultimately will be 3 courses. We're going to roll them out 1 year at a time. Physics for all in the 9th grade. The course is called Physics in the Universe. That's the course of study you have today and that we're asking for your approval on today. We have a team who is here writing away every week very diligently on this, and they can speak to that. The subsequent year we would roll out the 10th grade course, which is called The Living Earth, which is really a bio course with some earth science embedded. The subsequent year would be our new chemistry course that would replace existing chemistry and would be taught to all students with, again, this foundation in earth science. In terms of 12th grade and electives, we have every intention to continue offering our existing range of AP and electives that students can take at the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade just as they do now. We feel that the benefits of this course sequence are many. you can obviously read this, but we do really feel like our students are going to be better prepared to go out into the world. We really feel it's valuable to ensure all students are learning much more physical science, and that we're integrating these learnings in much more meaningful ways. Also, in terms of impact, 95% of our students already take 3 or more years of science, so we're going to actually keep that on par. Even though it's a 2-year requirement, almost all of our kids really are taking 3 years as is.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of our work on this, we've been here, and I'm going to let these guys speak to this, but to support the rollout of these courses, this is a shift that has been we haven't shifted like this in 25 years, so it's a big shift for us. We really want to dedicate the time to do it right and do it well. We have an excellent and amazing team of teachers, and they said, we need support, we need time to do this right, and we really have taken on the lens of equity in this work to ensure all students are learning all standards. So that means they need time to write the course, write the curriculum, and then we're really making sure that we embed differentiated supports to ensure that all of our students are able to access, these courses. So that's a big part of what they're doing, is building in these scaffolds for teachers to be able to use to ensure all students are learning. And I'm going to let them talk about all those things that they've been doing in a minute. Wanted you to know that the course of study in front of you has been through multiple feedback loops. It, again, represents the course of study, which is the backbone framework of the course, but not the actual course. They've gone much, much, much deeper. They still have plenty of work to do, but it's a work in progress. But this has been through multiple iterations of site department, district department. We have a science task force that we still have in place, as you know, but their job is to act as a feedback mechanism for this writing team. And on there we have physics experts, plus intervention specialists. We have ELD represented, special ed represented, some equity, people represented, some applied tech people represented on there. So and we just keep bringing back whatever they want feedback on. They get feedback, they incorporate it. And then the Curriculum Council, as you know, also oversees this, and that has multiple departments, all departments represented. So the course of study has been vetted through that particular group as well. So multiple teachers have had their eyes on it and had the opportunity to provide some feedback. I'm going to pass off now just to give you kind of an overview of their work to date on the course, and then ultimately we're going to be asking for your approval on our course of study. Okay.
In addition to the things that Tara mentioned, we should also mention that we met for 3 weeks this summer before this year started, and that we're also starting to roll out individual lessons and kind of test drive them at department meetings and staff meetings, and also the Physics of the Universe cohort. You want to talk about that a little bit? What we're doing on Tuesday, Wednesday evenings?
Sure. It's part of the support that we've gotten to help develop the course and then roll it out. The development team has met over the summer. We're in the midst, getting close to probably being halfway through the writing of the curriculum. We also had to develop, before we actually started writing and developing the course, we had to develop some structures to help us organize the work. So that's a piece that doesn't need to be repeated with the next 2 courses, unless there's a need to change those structures. But we took a bunch of time this summer. We've been busy writing over the course of the year, but we've also have a group of 10 to 12 people that are attending monthly meetings to look at the course as we develop it and as we roll it out. And then there are plans for a week-long intensive workshop for as many of the people that will be teaching the course next year as can do that during the summer. And then we would envision a similar process going forward with the next 2 courses. Some time to write in the summer, hopefully a team to continue the writing over the course of the year, and then bring people into the loop as the course is being written, but also continue that professional development work in the first year of implementation to evaluate stuff as it actually gets taught in the classroom, and to make any necessary adjustments, revisions, and so forth. miss anything?
We think it's going to be pretty tight. We think, I'm very optimistic that we're going to produce a course that's going to be a really good experience for the students and have the right level of rigor for ninth graders.
And the value of this model of having people collaborate is that at the start of this whole process, it will ensure some consistency across the sites, that equity piece across the sites.
Mm.
And it's just critical with an undertaking sort of this size and magnitude.
Can you speak to this a little bit?
Follow the bouncing ball. So this is we have the course that as we've developed is an integration of integrated science of earth science and physics, and it's centered around 6 large content units. Each content unit. No, this is the one unit. This has 5 lesson sequences within the first unit, and it's anchored around. This is all language from the next generation science standards, but the performance expectations are actually the state standards. The anchoring phenomenon is what we use to organize our instruction around the idea of allowing kids to figure out how these phenomena work. Questions to drive the process, that's something we've been using in the district for a long time. And the 3-dimensionality is the disciplinary content, that tan box kind of in the middle, is equally paired with scientific practices and consistent, important ideas that run through all the units and run between the 3 years of curriculum. And those are integrated into every topic that we take on. Sometimes it's tricky. 3 dimensions is tougher than 1. And in this particular unit, we've got 5 sequences, 5 lesson sequences, LS 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are 1.5 to 3 weeks worth of instruction around a more focused part of the content.
So it is a physics course, but you can see that it draws on phenomena from astronomy and cosmology, and that continues throughout.
What is the red shift as evidence of the Big Bang?
Wow.
Oh, good. I'm in school. I can tell. Yeah.
If you examine the spectra of distant stars and galaxies, we can predict certain spectral lines that are like fingerprints of elements, hydrogen and helium, but they're shifted a little bit to the redder part of the spectrum than they would be here on Earth. And the reason for that is because the things that emits this light are moving away from us at a very high speed, and so there's a Doppler effect.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's one of the ways, there's about 4 ways, but it's one of the ways that we know that the universe is expanding, because virtually everything out there in the night sky shows
Is redshift.
The farther away they are, the more redshift.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's the physics of the electromagnetic spectrum,
Mhm.
but it's taught through these cosmological phenomenon in the case of this particular unit, and then more Earth-based
Yeah.
phenomenon in some of the succeeding units.
Wow. No, this is really exciting.
Did you just say cosmological?
Cosmological.
Cosmological. Well, that makes sense. I've never heard of that word.
Astronomical, not astrological. Right.
Thank you.
Other questions, just jump right in.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Oh, he wants, go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
How many hours, just either you, Mike or Todd, how many hours as an individual do you have into physics in the universe?
Say it again?
How many hours of work in development do you think? Have you already done?
Including this board meeting.
Including this board meeting.
Board meeting is just a little part of it. Well, so there were, we had a group of about 6 of us over the summer that met over the course of 3 full weeks of work. And then since the start of the school year, we each have a release period. And so, whatever that comes to for each of us, 4 hours a week, and then we meet once each week as well. So we have one common meeting time to sort of hash through ideas and, bounce ideas off of each other, and then we're working separately for the other 3 or 4 days of the week.
And how much more
Sorry. Oh, and we took, yeah, actually, we had a release day, did we have 2 in the fall? Two of them in the fall, I guess.
And how much more time to get physics in the universe wrapped up?
Well, so, I mean, we'll continue it for the rest of the year, so we'll continue on that pace. My prediction is by the end of the year, we'll have 4 or maybe 5 of the 6 units done. And part of the job of the summer work that group that comes together to learn the curriculum will be to review the existing course materials that have been written. Some of that's already been shared out, but also to then apply that sort of learning by finishing out the writing of the rest of the course, the last unit or the last 2 units.
Okay.
As need be.
And the Living Earth, is that a different team?
Can I just back up on that one step? So
sure.
What we're talking about when we say writing the course, we're actually getting down to the level of individual activities, design labs and handouts and so forth.
Yeah.
We do have the units fleshed out in terms of at this level, but we don't have the detail filled out at each of these levels.
Yeah.
In those last couple of units.
Yeah, you know, because you've got the course of study.
Right.
So that, clearly that's done. Is there another team working on the Living Earth, or is that going to be you again?
We're going to launch a new team using the same model as this one to support the rollout of the Living Earth, and the shift would be getting some biology experts into those lead roles as opposed to more the physical science experts that were in this particular team.
Yeah.
Earth science experts.
And that's going to begin this summer?
We will launch those applications for those positions within the next month. And then, yes, they would begin their work over the summer and into next year, following the same model, providing professional development for teachers and course development.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a quick follow-up to Chuck. That was my main question is this FUN, I like that acronym, Physics in the Universe, the time it's taken, but then looking at the next 2 courses, I think, Mr. Samet, that you alluded to there being some efficiencies for the next 2 courses. You don't have to recreate the wheel in terms of the process. When I was at Redwood on my site visit Friday, I spoke to one of your colleagues, a science teacher, and I asked her about this next generation science standards, and she was very excited about it, but she was also a little concerned that there might be burnout and the time that it takes to develop the curriculum. And I mean, that map that you just showed us was impressive, and that's just one of 6 that you have. She was concerned about the next 2, if you would be able to stay on target. So I'm just curious if you have a gut feel. Kim's nodding her head, ever the optimist. You got it. Okay, and then a follow-up question to that is, it's always good to hear. I'm wondering if, because this is a California mandate, if you talk to other scientists in other school districts and see, if you talk to each other about how they're doing, if you need a great idea for the 6th one for Physics in the Universe, if they've got something already done and you could share something that we've done.
My feeling is that we're ahead of the other school districts we talked to, right?
Yeah, in many cases.
They're coming to us.
In many cases they are. And we've had conversations at specific points. It's not an ongoing part of the process, I think just because of time, and that we are, I don't know that we have a lot of close analogs in terms of other districts doing what we're doing at the same place that we are. I think that's probably part of the work that'll come after is as we revise and edit and
So it's a collaborative
fix
effort.
things. I think that there probably will be more collaboration between districts across the state as districts self-identify. We're doing something that's very similar, and we can potentially share some stuff. But we haven't done a lot of that. It's hard.
And they're asking. I have a phone. Let me tell these guys. I have a phone conference with Nevada's curriculum director tomorrow because she really wants to know how we approach this and what lessons learned, and we
Have we thought about charging other districts for our expertise? Yeah.
A couple additional things on the horizon. Because we're doing a physics for all in the 9th grade, this is going to come with some needs for some equipment, materials, and supplies. So the team is putting together a very detailed list of their needs with some estimates in terms of costs for what we need. And Tara and I are very much in the loop on that is the cabinet. So we're aware of some additional large expenditures that we're going to need to help support the equipment more deeply for the physics and the chemistry class based on what we have. So just it's coming our way soon, but we've been aware of that. So they're going to need a lot of some new equipment and supplies. Also, the instructional materials are going to need to be updated. So this isn't a cheap undertaking by any means. But we know about it. We're planning for it. And then yes, we do plan to support
Barbara,
the
I'm sorry.
biocourse.
Sorry, I want to give some other people a chance. One sec. No,
I
you're
just
fine.
had one final question for you, and that is, this is a California initiative. Do you have any sense nationwide how other states are doing in terms of their science curriculum in the public schools? I'd like to hear you say we're leading the charge in California with our science standards.
So there are 19 states that have adopted a close version of the next generation science standards. And there are, I just read this, numbers like 30 or 35 states that, including the 19, that are actively considering adopting the next generation standards or some version of it. They only came out in 2013, and that political process takes a little bit. So I don't know that California is ahead of any states, but we're certainly ahead of some.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the model for how it gets rolled out is, from what I can tell, is very different in different states. So I don't know that there's a close analog to what's going on in California.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm done.
Will students be able to double up on sciences and take the chemistry section sophomore year? Do you know?
I don't know.
Probably.
To be determined.
We're going to handle that on a case-by-case basis. But kids do have the opportunity to double up now, so we anticipate there being that option when it is deemed to be an appropriate choice for that particular student.
But then I presume that students won't be able to take chemistry at COM anymore because it won't include that earth science part.
Interesting observation.
Board policy does allow for 20 units to be met by alternative means, but the shift would be whether or not COM offers a chemistry and earth systems course, because the chemistry course will no longer be the same course. So there will be the ability for students to seek outside institutions if they choose to, but it just has to be the same course. The good news is we're adopting the most common sequence of courses across the state. So more often than not, other institutions will have a like course sequence to us than a sequence that's not alike, if that helps.
Go ahead.
I
Anybody?
have a number of questions. These are kind of out of order because I was reading the course of study and I was reading for assessments. And one of the activities, perhaps, I don't know if it's an assessment, includes developing models, and I assume that's 3D in some form? No?
Could be,
Okay.
but not
It could be?
necessarily.
Are you going to be able to provide samples for students to, in terms of assessments, will they see a sample of a high-level production for your assessments, for example? Will they, because it sounds like you have also developed some rubrics and some not prerequisites is what I'm saying, rubrics for performance rubrics as well. Yes?
Very often, yes.
Okay. Because that's going to be, you'll develop that presumably as you teach it. you'll have some hands-on practical look, this is what one looks like kind of stuff. I also noted.
Once they do it, will happen.
Huh?
Once somebody does a good one, will happen.
Yeah, but it will take time before that happens, and it'll, yeah. There are implications for math support, because you're doing engineering, and implications for, I saw some of your assessments include writing. Will English and math departments be able to support these assessments or these activities? Will they, how's that going to happen, or will it happen at all?
The good news is with Common Core and NGSS, there is an automatic alignment amongst the mathematical practices, the literacy standards, and the science and engineering practice. Not obviously a complete alignment, but there is an alignment. There is an intentionality around the design to integrate the practices across those content areas. And we will be collaborating with those departments as need be to support our success.
The standards, as they're written in the, actually as they were adopted by the state of California, but as they came out in their original form, those performance expectations that are the standards actually have at the bottom links to specific standards from Common Core Math and Common Core ELA standards.
Okay.
And a lot of the language is similar in terms of writing styles and mathematical practices.
Yay, good. I'm glad to hear that. You made reference to a practice that we've carried on in the past in terms of your essential questions. Is that based on understanding by design? That's good too. And finally,
we developed a template for how we're writing and sharing the unit level work. That's based on the understanding by design model, but it is adapted specifically to the next generation stuff.
Wow. And finally, what's the progress on teachers, science teachers getting their credentials based on what they have to teach here? What's our progress there?
I presented to the team in October the new credential requirements, and we have partnered with the Marin County Office of Ed and the College of Marin, and we have secured a college professor who is offering a CSET prep course to all county teachers on the Redwood campus. They meet monthly, alternating with the learning cohort. It's optional, and we're paying our teachers to do that, so they're aware of what they need. We do need to kind of work through some backwards plan to figure out what to do if we don't get everyone up to speed on our first go around. So that's going to be a work in progress too, but we've provided supports and information at this particular point in time.
Kim's really been the catalyst in the county to get this going.
Yes.
Really deserves credit. He's really been the catalyst.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Did you have one, Michael?
Yes.
I just want to give everyone a chance. I feel like it's public comment. We need to let everyone have a chance, and we go around the second round.
When we get down to the daily activities in class, what percentage of it is really, really, really new? Whole new, labs, whole new activities, and how much of it is stuff that you're already doing, that you've only had to mildly rejigger, or are you really creating something wholly new out of?
From my perspective, virtually all of it is really, really good.
In this course.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
We haven't been teaching a lot of physics in the integrated science curriculum, and now we are.
That's great.
So it's a different content area than we've been working with, and at a very different level.
Yes.
Course,
12 back down to 9th.
This course
It's a whole different world.
Significantly different. The Living Earth course will have closer connections to what happens in the integrated science program, because that is essentially an Earth biology integration. And the chemistry program will, while it's taught at the same same level that it's currently taught at, the current program has no earth science in it. So that's going to require not changing level so much, but changing the nature of the curriculum.
I wished I'd had a course like that in the ninth, what you're offering up when I was in the 9th grade. Yeah.
You can come and take it.
I'd call it
I know,
fun.
the whole board will go back.
Come join us.
Jacob and then
Okay,
Michael.
going off of what you said about the chemistry having more earth science in it, what is the chemistry that's like historically being taught? What is being taken away from that to like insert the earth science?
That's an excellent question. I don't think anyone has the answer for you yet.
Well, so it's what's the current chemistry course has a lot of chemistry in it. No, it does.
I've taken it.
It covers the discipline of chemistry and it covers it broadly, right? The new standards are broken into 3 sets of content-based standards. One in life sciences, one in earth sciences, one in physical sciences, which is split kind of evenly between stuff that would normally be in a physics course and stuff normally in a chem course. So the chemistry course will be based around the standards that are required. I'm not working with them this year, so I don't know them chapter and verse, but the stuff that'll come out is going to be the stuff that isn't represented in those standard sets as the state is telling us to do them.
Okay. And do you think that this would affect students' preparation for AP Chem and like the other AP Science courses that require like chemistry as a
I would argue
prerequisite?
that it would improve it.
Oh, perfect.
They won't know every last bit of content. They won't have been exposed to every last bit of content. The same argument would hold going forward to a college chemistry course, right? But what we hear from the colleges are they don't want somebody that's necessarily gone through all the content and now going through all the content a second time. They're looking for people that are better at applying their knowledge, thinking skills, understanding the connections between real-world phenomena and what's going on in the bench and the lab. And so hopefully this is designed to do a better job of that.
And not only will that happen, do we anticipate, but also more students are going to be taking chemistry, so therefore the prerequisite for AP chemistry will be completed by a greater volume of students, which will increase the access to that course.
Michael Futterman.
No, many of my questions have been answered. I was going to ask about math, among other things. I think it's really clever how you've, reading through the course of study, how you've integrated the earth science. Some of it's a little jarring, I have to say, when I think back on my high school physics course, and I look at Unit 3 and you're talking about, the earth and the core and all this stuff. It's not obvious to me, I can understand how you can teach them as part of the same course, but it's different from traditional physics.
Using earthquake waves to probe the interior structure of the earth.
Right.
Thinking about understanding nuclear processes as a mechanism for dating events in Earth's history and as a mechanism for generating internal heat in the earth. And there's some physics.
Good.
It's great.
Just thought I'd share that.
Can we get you back next year?
He just smiles.
Yeah,
I don't think he's.
So, two short questions and a comment. So, we don't have the course of study yet approved by the UC CSU evaluators. So, what's the risk that it's not going to be approved, or that we're going to have to go back, in your judgment, go back to the drawing board?
So the window so we can't go to UC until you approve it. And then the window opens for February 1st or February 15th. I can't remember off the top. February 1st. So there's 3 phases. So that's why we're here now, is because there's a February window, a Marchy window, and a, May into September. Anyway, there's 3 phases. So that we will be ready to submit during the first phase. If UC doesn't automatically approve it, they provide us feedback, and then we will have 2 more chances to submit. So that's been strategic in our timing to make sure we come to you in advance of the February submission date to UC to make sure we have multiple opportunities to submit. But what they're really calling for is a full alignment to the standards, which obviously we have, so I'm really not anticipating any issue.
Okay.
And they've already approved courses in this format. They've already approved the physics course in this format as a physics in the universe course.
Okay. Why isn't the word biology included in the title of the second year's course?
Great question. That's actually a loaded question. this course sequence is based upon the California framework and is going to be the most commonly adopted course sequence in the state. They named these courses. The issue is, we've talked about it, we actually still need to argue over the title of the other courses because this team had wanted to use biology and the earth to be very clear about what the course was. The complication there is when students don't pass a class the first time or desire to take the course somewhere else, if it doesn't have the same name, people won't view it on a transcript as it being the same course. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I want to tell you, because we've already started getting questions about the new science sequence. I can guarantee you we're going to get questions, repeated questions from parents about where's biology here.
It's in the living earth.
I understand
Why?
that.
Because the state named the course that.
Yeah. Well, okay.
It does seriously limit the remediation opportunities and the choice opportunities for kids who want to, one, go to alternative coursework to clear the same course and or repeat the same course for repeated original credit or grade recovery if we don't use the same name.
But if you guys want to call it biology in the earth,
Then that's fine.
go ahead.
That's on you.
Yeah.
Just-
I mean, still seriously, it's
We
like,
are still arguing over that at our level. We haven't completely landed because people are really, really wanting to see that bio name in there. So we have not decided 100% on that name.
I mean, people are expecting to see it, right? I mean, if you're thinking about the three core,
And
right, areas of
right,
science.
But across the state, they're also not going to see it anymore because it changed.
Yeah. Well, we can be leaders, maybe. Anyway, most important.
no, it's a good observation.
It is. One we are actually grappling with.
Most importantly, I think this is one of the most exciting things we're doing as a district. I am so thankful for all the hard work that has gone into this, for you guys putting in the extra work, Todd, for your sticking with it and putting as much effort as you are and showing so much energy and, notwithstanding, I know you're looking forward to doing some other things, and it's really demonstrates your professionalism and dedication. I'm just thrilled at this. This is going to be a real exciting academic road for our students to travel. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I think you'll have more than one board member wanting to come back to school. I felt that way when you came about the new history curriculum. And this is just wonderful. So thank you so much. And thank you for coming out in the evening to present. Really appreciate it.
And we are requesting a vote tonight.
Oh, that's right. See, everyone has to help me tonight because I just wanted to sit here and, okay. Okay.
So it is the next item.
Okay,
We wanna
thank you.
Make sure that you are clear that this does replace Integrated Science 1-2 as a graduation requirement.
Okay. So, may I have a motion to approve new course of study for physics in the universe?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those
So
in
wait,
favor?
to be clear,
wait,
though,
I'm gonna.
this replaces the graduation requirement beginning with the class of
2022. Maybe we should add that to the motion,
Well,
Mr. Attorney, right?
we would make some people pretty upset if we changed it for next year.
It says it in the
Okay,
notes.
good. Okay, so that's understood. Now, I'm going to remember this time. Would the student trustees like to provide a preferential vote? Oh,
Yes.
great. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Now for the trustees, all those in favor? Aye. Great, that passed. Thank you again. Really appreciate all your hard work. Thank you. Yes. Everyone's being so helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have a board bylaw here a little earlier. I apologize. It doesn't say on the top, but within the rationale, this is 9150. We put up a little early because it relates specifically to students. I believe this was brought not too long ago, but there are some new revisions on there. We want to allow our student trustees ample time to provide input on this because it does directly affect our student board members. We spent some time in here. If you're not familiar with the red line shows you what the changes are and what the strikeouts are. It talks about the selection process for student trustees. But basically, I'll highlight here that from our comprehensive high schools, they're elected from the student body. So there's an election process for that. And that in the past, I understand that they were required to take a leadership class. It now says they're not required to, but may choose to take that. And then for our alternative schools, San Andreas and Temescal, they're selected by a process determined by the site governance team. So it isn't necessarily an election process at Temescal and San Andreas. There's also changes here with regards to the preferential vote. Although preferential vote was in there, and our board does work diligently at allowing the preferential vote. I think that's basically it. I'm happy to answer questions and take feedback. Generally, also, any of you at any time between now and the next board meeting certainly can provide input to me and or Mary if you know, what about this or what about that as well, in case the question doesn't come to you tonight. So these are first reading, no action tonight, and I'll bring it back for a second read. So I'm happy to answer questions around this particular one. Mr. Futterman.
So it could be that the student trustees would be a little shy to ask this question, so I'm going to ask this question on their behalf.
You do that.
I noted that the section with respect to remuneration for service as a student trustee has been deleted. Is there any, has there been any feedback from student trustees with respect to this issue?
Yes. So yes, I'm looking at it now. So remunerations has been deleted as it lists there. I'm looking real quick at how. What should we look for? So if you look right above it, it does specify that student board members are entitled to be reimbursed for mileage, and it does say we also support their attendance at. Under the next section, under member development, superintendent shall, at district expense, provide learning opportunities. So aside from sort of reimbursement for mileage and professional development, I'm not sure what other remunerations would be applicable to student trustees.
Oh, they might have some ideas.
They might. So yes. They're having too much fun over there, though, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't think it takes any remunerations away from what we had before, but places it in other places or it already existed in other places.
So if between now and the next meeting you get a chance to look it over, and like Dr. Yoshihara said, you can always send a suggestion ahead of time, but feel free. If you're busy studying, just come to the meeting and definitely speak up if you have any concerns.
I have just a question. This is sort of a small matter, and it doesn't say anything about it, but providing access just to microphones for the student trustees, especially because there's so many of us now and we're equal to the actual trustees, it might be nice for us to have more than 2 microphones because the regular trustees have more as well. But it doesn't list anything about microphones in the original either.
I have that down. If technically, I don't know how many hookups we have, but yes, if we can get that in there.
We had 7, now we have 6 because one's broken, and we are going to get a new system next year, right? We're going to budget for it. Hopefully.
We're working on it, yes.
No, I do sympathize. And tonight we've got 2 trustees that are sharing it. It is really hard. So we'll keep looking at that and see if we can find an interim measure before we get new ones, because I do understand what you're saying.
I just had a comment. This was a very important subject for one of our former student trustees, Noah Block from Drake, and I can't remember all of the changes that he recommended, but I'm wondering if we can just give him an FYI that we are.
I do actually remember one of the changes he was talking about is possibly making the student name tags a bit more permanent, like the regular trustees. I remember that was something he cared about. I don't know if the current trustees. if we feel strongly.
Okay. Great, like you know what I mean?
Okay, wait. In the district's defense, like so far this year, like 2 of the student trustees have already switched out, so I feel like having the permanent nameplate might be like fiscally irresponsible.
Yeah.
That's good.
With our $6 million deficit.
But do you think they would have switched out if we'd had permanent nameplates?
Yeah, maybe that, and microphones, yeah.
Why don't we just get one that says Noah blocked? That'll keep Noah happy.
We could name this board bylaw like the block bylaw.
Block
There's
bylaw.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
I will put that down.
Yeah, he's going to put that down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I assume there's no other comment. We can move on. Okay, great. So let's move on to item D, and I think that's Lars Christensen to approve the design and architectural service contract for
Good evening,
PhD
members of the
architects.
board and Superintendent Dr. Yoshihara. As you are aware, we approved last meeting in concept the notion of PhD architects taking over design services for interim housing phase 2. We have the actual contract before you this evening, and we respectfully request that you approve the contract.
So moved.
Can I have a quick question? I'm asking, I forgot, that's right, I'm board president. I can do that.
You're the president. What if I said no?
It's getting late,
We're
I better be
having
careful.
so much fun down here.
I'm getting flashbacks, I keep thinking. Am I to assume that if our attorneys have not looked at this, it's pending attorney review?
They have looked at this.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
thank you. I was
Yeah,
wanted to
they
word
have.
that carefully.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
they have looked at it.
Okay, thank you. So we're at a so moved, so now we need a second?
Second.
Do we have a preferential vote? Or you're both. You know, you have to get like singers because you only have these microphones. It's like you have to put your heads together, don't you? So all those in favor, please say aye.
But then you don't have any.
Jake's got nothing.
This is for the student.
I have both now.
I.
Aye.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, my fellow trustees, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So that passed. Thank you, Lars, and it
You're
looks
welcome.
like
Thank
you're
you.
up next for this, the piggyback.
As you likely recall, for interim housing phase 1, in order to find the most opportune and cost-effective lease agreements, we piggybacked with a school district, actually the same school district, Franklin McKinney, last year. We're asking that the board adopt the resolution before you this year to jump on, literally, the same piggyback clause, which will allow us to expedite the acquisition of the 8 portable classroom units that we're requesting the board approve in the next item. So with respect, ask for your approval of the resolution with Franklin McKinney School District.
Are there any questions or discussions? I'll take that as a no. Can we have a motion to adopt Resolution 17-8 for a piggyback agreement with Franklin McKinney School District?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And it sounds like this is a roll call vote.
So do the preferential though.
And the superintendent wisely advised me that I forgot again for the preferential vote. Would you like one? All those in favor, the student trustees?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Futterman,
Aye.
Ms. Owen,
Aye.
and Ms. Lundgren.
Aye. Thank you, it passed.
Thank you. And my final item for the evening, in anticipation of this resolution passing, worked with Mobile Modular and our attorneys in developing lease agreements for 8 portable classroom units that we will place this summer, 4 at Tamalpais High School and 4 at Redwood High School. These are the lease agreements. As I say, they've been reviewed by legal counsel. We worked with Mobile Modular last summer. We're very happy with the product they provided and the service they provided with regard to install. So again, with respect, ask that you approve these lease agreements.
Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, I have a question about this one. So unfortunately, this one is the one that costs something, right?
It does.
More than the architect's one did as well, but, you know.
Architectural services are at approximately $37,000 per site. Lease agreements, and we can pull up the number for you momentarily. I want to remind the board, though, that while there certainly is a cost to the lease agreements, the primary cost in this entire endeavor, interim housing, is site preparation, the actual construction.
Right, but unfortunately, the cost wasn't called out in the description, you know, what was on the agenda item, so we had to kind of go through the documents. So paragraph 4 of the terms and conditions says that there's a not to exceed $368,016. So that's for the lease. So can you tell me, is that for, what is that? Is that for the length of the lease?
That's for the entire length of the lease.
For all?
For all of the portables combined, yes. And it's a 5-year, it's essentially a 5-year lease.
Okay, and can you remind us what rights, if any, we have as lessees to purchase the portables at the end of the 5 years?
We could theoretically purchase them. I wouldn't recommend it because these portables, they've been reconditioned, but they were likely manufactured probably 20 to 25 years ago. Again, they've been reconditioned, so they're in pretty good shape. The reason that we're leasing and not purchasing is because we do anticipate removing them in approximately 5 years. We're hopeful of that. We have purchased, as you know, the restroom units, the 2 restroom units for Redwood High School, because they're going on permanent foundations and will remain with us beyond the 5-year interim housing, prediction. But we do hope to move these out in the next few years. So that's why we're leasing. And if we choose to, I don't think we will because we're going to need them, but we could theoretically pull them out earlier if we wanted to. We don't have to keep them for the length of the lease, though we likely will need to.
Okay. And you have an estimate as to what the site preparation costs are going to be yet, or
not yet? That's what the architectural services will do. We're doing our very best. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with Tamalpais High School this year, which that site preparation was a bit tricky and more complicated given their proximity to the flood zone. We're placing these 4 portables at Redwood High School adjacent and fronting the existing 3. We've done a lot of the infrastructure already. We put in the water main, the fire hydrant. We've already brought power to the area, so we don't need to bring power and do the trenching again. So we've done everything we can to get ready, short of actually landing the portables on that blacktop area. Tam High, very similar. We've led power and so forth to that area. TAM's portables will be adjacent to the existing 2 portables there. Parking, again, we've got a bit of a conundrum with parking at TAM, but we're working on that on the other end too. That'll be conversation for another day. But those portables will be in that rear parking lot adjacent to the 2 we placed last summer. So really want to commend my colleague, Dr. Topier, because as you know, if you look back at the FMP and so forth, there was a call for a larger number of portable classrooms than we're bringing in. The worst thing I think I could do to this board is to bring in buildings that sit empty for a year or 2. We likely will need to have an interim housing phase 3 at a couple of our school sites, but we feel that the portables we're bringing in this year, this coming summer, will be enough. We also, though, want to remind you, we're coupling the bringing in of these portables with 2 room conversions at Redwood High School and 2 room conversions at Drake High School. We're hopeful through this whole growth process that, over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, we won't need any interim housing at Drake. We can just do it with some internal work, namely dismantling a couple of computer labs and converting them to regular classrooms. Same thing at Redwood High. Though we do have some, we had a great science presentation a few moments ago. We are in the process of taking a hard look at what we need with regard to laboratories over the course of the next 2-3 years. We're working on that as we speak. A lot of moving parts. Site preparation, I expect the cost of that could go into 6 figures, even though we've done a lot of the work already. It's remarkable, the cost of construction these days. The construction associated with the engineering. And that Redwood High spot, even though it's a blacktop, that sits in the 100-year floodplain.
I have a question regarding the Tam High portables. is there currently any plan to like add parking in a different location to like make up the spots that you're gonna lose?
We're working on doing some off-site parking, and I'm purposely not going to be real specific, but yes, we are working on some off-site parking that would offset, actually more than offset the loss of the spaces that we'll have to give up when we place these additional 4. It's a challenge, as you know. I mean, you're living it. It's a challenge.
I think you've probably heard this before, but I heard it again during our stakeholder interviews that the board conducted, that the neighborhood on the side of TAM student parking lot where we're talking about now, and this part I didn't quite connect with. That area is county property.
It is.
So I believe it's the highway patrol or sheriff. Sheriff covers that. Mill Valley Police covers the front parking lot. And so it's really hard to manage. If there's safety issues or people speeding, the Mill Valley Police can get there pretty quickly, but they don't go to the back side of the school. And apparently with the city of Mill Valley, as well as the I can't remember what the initiative is called. It's basically Ride Your Bike to School, and they've spent a lot of time.
Safe routes to school.
Thank you. Safe routes to school, and that there are families that don't want their children to do that because of the very enthusiastic drivers that we have as students. And then I've heard it even from, I got a massage at that massage place, and they were talking about it. So at what point do we consider the one option of having the teachers park in that back parking lot, and then the overflow, back in the front, to help remedy that? Because it seems as though we're hearing the safety concern a lot, and it's getting to the point where it seems that we really need to address that.
Based on those comments, I'll set up a meeting with J.C. Farr and David O'Connor. We'll talk about that, long term. The only other thing I would say is that I've witnessed not just students driving too fast in that area; it's grown-ups too, particularly during athletic events and so forth.
Right.
It's not just the kids. Not just the kids. That's a tough area. It's unincorporated. Not tough. I mean, it's a beautiful area, but it's a tough area to manage because it is an unincorporated area of town. People are used to kind of parking at will down there, and you see it during the day.
Well,
it's
your
very
description of the flood, and it looked like cars had been all moved.
Oh, yeah.
I told that to a few people. They thought, gosh, that's perfect description.
It really looks like that. So we've got some thoughts. Unfortunately, it all comes with a pretty hefty price tag, whether it be development of additional parking and so forth.
I was just talking about the teachers parking there, not the students.
And
the
maybe
students parking in the
rearranging
front.
how people park there as best we can could help with that.
But I'd be curious what happened. Why we just don't have teachers park there. But you can have them park there and then whatever overflow in the front. I guess I'm just wondering why not
It was that way, then they flipped it a few years ago for several reasons that I'm sure they could.
Anyway, sorry to get off topic.
No, we'll have the
Thank
conversation.
you.
I think it's a healthy one.
Okay. Are we, any more comments? Oh,
just one more. Do you know if any plans have been made for providing Drake students with unisex bathrooms?
I know there's been, I'm not trying to be coy. I know there's been conversation. I'm not aware of any concrete plans, but I'm happy to check and report back to you. If you send me an email tomorrow, I can do a little digging. I know that our director of M&O has had conversations with the site administration about a couple of conversions, but I don't know that there's a concrete plan. So if you'd send me an email, I'll dig into it and should get back to you by Friday.
Okay.
Thank you. Are we ready for a vote? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the lease agreement for 8 portable classrooms, interim housing phase 2?
So moved.
How about a second?
Second.
Aye.
Very good.
Aye.
Thank
you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much. So let's do a time check, and I just have a few ideas here. The next topic was, or is, discussion of district goals, board goals, and priorities, and we had allotted a half hour for that. And then we have quite a few readings that would take us up to the hour. I am wondering, and I think you might be aware, I don't feel as prepared for this as I'd hoped, but I think what would still be helpful is that I could share with you what I envisioned as the process of how we tackle this. And then especially with the two teachers who are used to looking at lesson plans, they can help us decide if the process makes sense. And if we can agree on the process, then we can start moving forward. I know that not everyone is available on weekends coming up, and I do want to be sensitive to that. In some ways, this discussion probably is better to try and fit in during our evenings so that we have more district staff that can hear and sometimes participate if we have questions. So we'll try and incorporate this into our agendas and go from there. But that's the first stop. So let me first describe one approach, and then I really look forward to seeing what your feedback is. So with the idea that, let's start from the end and work back. It would be very helpful for us as a board to have priorities to provide to the superintendent, and he can work with the staff to know what we see the vision is for our district in terms of priorities. It'd also be very helpful to get feedback on whether any of the cabinet or staff or the superintendent have feedback on what we think our priorities are. So that's our outward directive, let's say. And then there's the inward, which is how do we help facilitate that by the way we function as a board? And that's where we would look at our self-evaluation and are we functioning in the best way we can in order to help move the process forward for the next year for our priorities. And then in addition to that, it would be a time for us to look at some practical issues such as, just as an example, we heard tonight from Trina Mars, so we're saying, maybe as a board we'll say, well, part of the tools we'll use is we want to have a workshop this quarter of the calendar year that's going to focus on pension, whether we need to get more politically active because that was one of our self-evaluation issues, was that we realized we hadn't gotten involved with policy making. We can kind of ask ourselves those questions early on of what concrete things we want to do as a board, or assign certain board members to maybe take certain issues on. So that's what I was thinking where we would be, but then to get there, and we started this, and thank you, Tara made some copies, is that we start with our goals, big picture, what the goals are, for the district, and we know that the LCAP is aligned with those goals already, and then we have that as a roadmap, that we know that we have programs in place. And if we really look back at the LCAP that Tara presented, and Tara made copies that we can provide you to take home, then that should reflect the budget. We don't want to have something in the budget that's not part of the LCAP. And then from there, if we look at how things are measured, and one of the measurements is the CASP results, and that's where it would probably be helpful to have the measurements discussion here, because you'd be here to help us to see if we really want, as we look to the budget for the next 6 months, especially now that we know we're going to be looking at cost reductions, it'll help us make sure that we're not reducing in an area that we've decided already should be a priority. So that's kind of the general approach, is what I was envisioning, and I have copies here of the LCAP goals, which was the presentation that Tara provided in September that actually has the nuggets. We have the CASP results, and everyone could take one home and then be thinking about that, and then at the next meeting maybe talk about priorities. I don't suggest that we are going to re-examine everything that we're doing. We don't want to suddenly say, let's drop this initiative. Clearly that would be, clearly we're going to keep moving with STEM and all these other initiatives, but So I want to open it up, especially to the teachers and your study plan idea or lesson plan.
Are you, would it be appropriate for us to have this time at the next board meeting?
Well, this is where it's tricky. I think we know that right now there's a priority already that landed in our laps that we need to have this deliverable to the Marin County office in March 15th. So we look at how many board meetings we have. I don't want to completely drop it. It might mean that we just keep it limited. We're going to have to see as we go, because we may have to already add a meeting to deal with the workshop for this deliverable in March. I'm thinking, yes, we might have to break it in modules, and that's where I think definitely could use all your help with how we do that. Can we do it in parallel? I mean, maybe right now we can all agree priority is to get a handle on, continue on and with, the superintendent's help with the cost recovery measures. Maybe we already know that's a priority.
I'm wondering, Leslie, the last board meeting you asked us to get back to with weekends that we were available. Did it just look like that was not feasible in the next couple of months?
It was tough. I know I think it was tough. We still need to hear from all the board members, and I think everyone's been, and then I did hear from a few that, and the schedule looks pretty busy. So, I mean, we can still try. I just wanted to throw this out here. Even if we do it on the weekend, we could, if this is, maybe tonight, if we could say, is this the approach we take? Is this the question we look at first, second, and third? And that's what would be good to hear from you all. What do you think?
I wrote down outward direction and inward. Outward, we look at the direction, and then inward, we look at
how we function.
Our governance protocols, and that incorporates what we learned from the board self-evaluation,
right.
And
yeah.
our governance handbook, which we should be looking at every year. So I think the approach is good. I'm thinking about how we do that, given what we've got in the next couple months in our regular agendas. That's why I was asking about
Yeah,
the
no,
Saturday.
it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
And I'm
I hear
remembering
it.
a year ago when we had our Saturday workshop to define those 3 goals, that it was so helpful to be able to be in there eating donuts and, talking about, talking in a more informal way about the direction and such.
So maybe what we do is, if everyone can look at their calendars and look again for Saturday, but also look for any extra days during the week in the evening, and we'll have this master calendar, and Dr. Yoshihara can look at that, and we'll see if we can have a workshop that's just focused on this. That's a 2-hour workshop, starts at 6 and ends at 8. Knowing that it might be that we may come back and ask for 2 workshops because of this deliverable to the Marin County in March. It just might be a tough February, busy February.
Okay, so you're looking for us to supply evening dates 6 to 8 p.m. approximately?
Or if you prefer a different time, that's fine too. I just assume people might prefer not to be rushing here and at 4:30 again. If you want earlier, that'd be great. I'm open to anything. And then in parallel to that, Dr. Yoshihara and I can look still at how we could weave this into, for instance, again, I'm just assuming our priority is to deal with I'll call it cost recovery. Maybe if we know we're going to have a workshop and look at the nuts and bolts of that, maybe as part of that workshop, we already know what the outward message will be. It'll be some form of, this is what we need to do. And during part of that discussion, we look inward. We say, so how as a board, how can we facilitate this? Should we go to the schools and talk to the parents. You know, I'm just throwing this out. You know, that's where maybe we weave it into every time we look at a priority. It's just part of it. And then at the end, after we've worked through our inward discussion, then we look at the governance handbook again and say, oh, we think this works better. What we just did worked better. We revise, however. So maybe we just tried both, because we do have so much on our plate the next month and 6 weeks. We really do. Yeah. And I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. Do you have any thoughts, Michael?
Well, I do think that discussion of goals is important to ensure that we're all on the same page. I think it helps to ground us. But having said that, I'm really concerned that the current fiscal situation is going to require a lot more time and difficult discussions, including probably some stakeholder discussions than maybe we would have been anticipating even as long as a month ago. I mean, in light of the letter from the county, and you know, and effectively the warning about the second interim, you know, we've got all of the issues with respect to the parcel tax, which is going to require, which is going to take up a significant portion of our time, including communication with community and organizing and so forth. While at the same time, I just get the sense that we're going to have to be moving in parallel in terms of cost reductions. And I mean, let's be really honest, right? 85% of our budget is personnel, right? So if the county office is telling us they're not going to be approving our budgets, right? They're starting to signal that, right? Unless we've got some kind of plan at the same time, we've got really difficult sort of decisions that are going to have to be made, and we're not making any of these decisions without getting input from staff and administration, and I mean, I'm just afraid that
I agree. I think kind of echoing what you're saying, we go to Plan B, which was stick with using the priority we know that we have was what you just said, and part of that process functioning as a board will naturally fall out. I mean, we'll naturally have to talk about how are we going to communicate, how are we going to talk to the public, should we, you know, all those things will probably fall out, and it'll be a little model for other priorities. But maybe we could agree tonight that that's really our priority for the next, you know, several months. You know, that everything else stays the same for now, but I mean, that is the top priority. And then if we find another priority, we throw it out there. But right now, we all know that's the priority.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that goals are going to help to, and all these discussions, budget necessarily implicates programs and
the LCAP, right,
and the LCAP, and so in making the decisions and looking at hard choices, we're going to be assessing what our goals are, right, as a board and as a district. Maybe I'm just repeating it a different way, the same thing.
No, I see what you're saying, because you're putting your money where your priorities are and your values, and your values are in your LCAPs and your goals. But then we got this cost cut. I mean, it may just all work through with.
I mean, I've sat on the board now with Chuck for a while. I've listened to his comments about how difficult these kinds of fiscal decisions are.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I've listened, and I sort of understood them, and now I'm understanding them. I'm beginning to understand them and take them, you know, just with a little more gravitas even than I was before. Yeah. And so I think this is going to be, I mean, we shouldn't kid ourselves. We're going to have some really difficult discussions over the next few months.
Difficult discussions, and people are going to be very angry.
Yeah, so.
The sooner we get started, it's the only way I can feel like I can handle it is the sooner we get started together. So, and the fiscal issue for me is, as you all know, has been very prominent for me.
Yeah, I think it has for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if let's set up a time, let's get started.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're moving in the right course with respect to the revenue side of the equation.
Right, right.
But I think we've gotten a message, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
From the county office, as if we didn't hear, as if we hadn't had the message before, because of course we had. We're just getting it really now from another source, right? Which is saying, you know, you guys better get your act together, and it's not just on the revenue side. So we have to be proceeding in parallel with respect to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think our fiscal responsibility is the top priority. I also think for this year, 17-18, we know what our goals are. This agenda item is for 18-19, I think, and I think those goals, district goals, board goals, and priorities will come to us when we look at the LCAP and the budget again for 18-19. So for me, I feel like, you know, I think our time is best spent right now on tackling the fiscal situation, and we've got the structure right now in place with the LCAP we have answers for what our goals are.
And that was a misprint. That was my mistake for not catching it. It was really meant to, from this calendar year, to get moving. So, but thank you. That's a good point. So, sooner the better. Start on
Saturday?
the fiscal cost reduction and how we're going to deal with it. We'll use the LCAP and the goals we've already established as our guide in terms of what we know is important. And definitely we'll get staff input and superintendent input. It's going to be tough. Throughout the process, we'll probably have to look inward and how we're functioning and decide how we go out to the community and the stakeholders. I mean, there'll be lots of things that we'll probably naturally deal with, and this will be our pilot of looking at that, and it'll probably all fall out. So with that, I'm wondering, should we consider, and we're getting some really good information, it sounds like, at the next February meeting. And I'm sorry I have my back to you, Dr. Yoshihara. It's the table. I don't mean to be. You must hate looking at the back of my head. Because I feel like I would need to hear from you. Do you think we need, I guess I'll ask you, based on what you know about the upcoming agenda in February, do you think we should have a workshop and invite Trina Mars sooner than that, or structure that agenda? Boy, this is going to be tough because that's a lot of information in February at the first meeting. I'm wondering if we have 2 meetings in a row and have, because I'm assuming, Dr. Yoshihara, your staff needs help, or you need time to look at how you will structure the
It's
cost
certainly
cutting.
not my purview how you organize your meetings, but I do need to have, I have a critical action item on February 26th.
And what is
So
that?
It's our non-reelects.
Okay.
So that has to happen. I need the board to take action
Right.
on February 26th.
So that was
27,
one.
27,
Right.
27th, sorry.
And that's
that second meeting in February.
Okay, so that's one reason too. To tell you the truth, we've talked about always calling a board meeting, so that we could take action on critical items and keep those to a minimum, but just have the format more of a workshop exchange during the meat of the meeting.
And that's
so that
fine,
we'll
yeah.
make sure we do that so that you don't get behind. Okay, thank you for that.
This is still sort of drafty and more thinking out loud. But Mary can work with the board in finding possibly a weekend or a couple hours in an evening to talk about some broad approaches to the fiscal structural deficit. There are some challenges with that information and how we approach it if it starts getting out as some sort of list of stuff, let's just say that. On the background, you also have this conversation that we've been having around the possibility of a parcel tax. So as Trustee Anderson mentioned, the next meeting, we will have polling results and stakeholder outreach results, or information from Whitehurst, Mosher, and Godby research. So you have that in the backdrop of a of a serious fiscal situation. And so the timing and placement of that should be strategic. So perhaps the meeting would be around the strategy with which to present that data. I still need to talk with Tarina more to see what may be expected at second interim. Her and I, certainly they want to support us and we want to work together on that. And to the extent that we will be able to weave in some of the governor's information for the next fiscal year, which, again, from a revenue side is positive. So getting a date down to have that conversation would be helpful. A good couple hours for me to lay the frame of some of the things that I'm thinking and what that means, and to have the board understand what the impact of that is, but also understand sort of the next steps of how do we then bridge from that workshop board meeting time to second interim would be helpful. And again, Mary can help find those times for us. But my thinking is that occur after the next board meeting. We need to hear Whitehurst motion. We need to hear Godby, because the polling sits in the background of sort of part of the solution to this, right? A 50% or 100% increase of the parcel tax is a tremendous boost to the bottom line for revenue for us.
I may have misunderstood her. I thought she had said that she looks at the parcel tax as a wish and that we needed to proceed as though we weren't getting more revenue and we didn't have to recover within a year. We could look at a 3-year timeline so that we don't hit insolvency in 2.5 years. And so I'm wondering if we really just put blinders on and approach this as if the parcel tax didn't pass, and really look at what that would mean. And it'll be brutal, but I don't, if that's what, and that'll probably be helpful when you follow up with her, but and I think it would help us to actually have some recommendations and maybe have 2 alternatives, if you, whatever you think makes sense, and unfortunately lay it out with how it's the least impact possible to the students, looking back at the LCAP, and then we review what you've put together. I don't know what the other board members think about that approach.
Yeah, I think you, David, need to talk to the MCOE and get some idea of the numbers they're going to expect. You know, what, you know, when we have our, 3-year projection, what what numbers they are looking at there. And I think that, I think that has to be a starting point. Another, one thought too is, and this doesn't bear on the process, but at the, on March 15th, we're gonna pass a resolution with a plan. Now, whether the parcel tax, even if the parcel tax passes and none of those cuts that are included in that resolution that we prepare on March 15th, there is still going to be some seriously hurt feelings around that. And, we have to acknowledge that that resolution is going to be absolutely toxic.
Right.
Absolutely toxic. But there's nothing we can do except, go ahead and do it. But we need to, understand in advance and, prepare in advance how hurtful that is going to be. How people are going to feel that, trust is broken, how people are going to feel that their work is not valued, that the board, the administration doesn't care about staff, doesn't care about students. All that is going to come to pass.
Maybe all the more reason then that we really focus on not doing any of this work on a weekend. This needs to be very transparent and on a regular weekday.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some work we can do that doesn't involve this on weekends, so we have more time during the week to do this stuff, but it has to be transparent. I mean, we just can't dump this hit list of
And I
programs and positions out of the blue.
So without discounting anything that Chuck has said, because I think he's right, I do think that we ought to be careful about not self-inflicting too many unnecessary wounds here, right? So I think we need to think creatively. I do think that this suggestion that both David and Chuck have said about and I think Leslie too, about speaking with Trina and making sure what is it that they really need to know is important. Because if we don't have to go through this process of contingent, right, layoffs or cuts or announcements or prioritization of programs or whatever it is, it would be good to know that before we engender a lot of ill will that is not is not maybe avoidable. Let's drill down in terms of what the county office is really asking for. I think, speaking for me, it would be useful also to know, we have certain time periods, right, in which we have to make certain decisions, right, with respect to notices and that kinds of things. I think it would be helpful for the board also to have a sense of, to revisit that again, what a time period would be like, so when we would have to make these decisions, do we have the ability to make decisions, after the date that we have the parcel tax election, for example? To what extent can we postpone some of this stuff? To what extent can we not? That kind of thing.
Yes, I think a conversation with Trina will be helpful. And if anything, getting a date with the board that we all agreed to, at least to have that slot as a holder, would be helpful as well.
And I think, too, just sort of rethinking what our last exchange, if we get, if we have to get very specific about what needs to be eliminated, there is also damage to be done by, in a public meeting when you bring up all kinds of things. So, I bring up, well, maybe we could get rid of this program, and then, we decide, no, we don't want to do that. But that program has been put on the table.
Yeah. Right.
And that's going to be, and that is going to be very upsetting. Anything that we mention publicly as a possibility for elimination is damaging for everything. So, how much, another thing is worth learning, absolutely, is how much specificity is going to be needed in that resolution. If we specify we're getting rid of this position, this position, this position, or do we specify we need to eliminate 6.5 positions? Because if it's more general, then, individuals aren't insulted. Because much of this may not have to come to pass in the end if the parcel tax passes. And we don't want to pass a parcel tax and still have a pool of blood.
Oh, Chuck.
But that's what it's like.
Yeah. In an odd sort of way, and I don't know, but I'm wondering this would help the parcel tax pass. People would really understand this is serious. This is not us. I mean, this is, it's, we want to try and keep what we got, and look what we're having to potentially give up, so.
That's true.
And
But
people.
it could also be viewed as, extortion. The board is acting in an extortionist manner by threatening to get rid of all this stuff unless you bundle up.
Well, that's where it's lucky that part of this directive came from the Marin County Office of Education. It's not like we've already been working on it, but now we've gotten a directive. And
I think that Tarina, the Marin County Office of Education, has a lot of experience on this whole process,
Right.
and we don't. Chuck has more experience than the rest of us up here, but I think that if we had more direction from professionals who've seen other districts go through this in terms of, how we do it in the most constructive way, the sooner we get that intel, the better. We're going to have to make big decisions in February and March. So the sooner we get that direction, the better, is my feeling.
Do you have any questions? We've been all throwing out concerns, but there's some. Do you have any questions of what we're asking to have happen in terms of going back to the Marin County Office of Education?
Not at this point.
Okay.
I like Chuck's idea with FTE creates a layer of anonymity to specific positions that the county may be okay with by second interim.
I just want to make sure, because I wasn't writing all these down, and so I'm going to take a stab at what I think I've heard so far, and then please chime in, especially since it takes time to get the tape. But there was the issue that I also heard Michael ask was along those lines as well, that what is the specificity that they're really asking for? What is it specifically, what does this report look like? And also, I think somebody also talked about the time frame. What numbers do they expect to see over the next 3 years? What is their? Yeah, I assume it's not to get below 4%, but it'd be good. Really get specific with them. I've also heard that there's a parallel concern about, like you said, leaving a pool of blood, even if we get a parcel tax. So we need to start thinking right away, what is the plan for managing this information to our district as well as the outer community? And I think, Laura, you in particular said that MCOE, and Barbara, I heard you say the same thing, that MCOE has experience, so let's get that. Because we got to get started on that the minute we start. It's not something we can do once we see people lined up. We need to be prepared. I know I'm missing other issues.
Resolution language. So there are two things that Tarina talked about. She talked about the report, the second interim report, and what she's looking for, and then I think Chuck,
that's
Barbara,
right.
the resolution.
And Michael said that too. Yeah, how to the resolution language, how. And Barbara's big point is, let's get started right now. We got to get moving. To get moving, we need this information from Marin County. So I think it's pretty clear that the superintendent needs to make contact tomorrow. Did I miss anything? And I apologize if I did. I was kind of involved, just trying to listen to everybody. Michael, I feel like you said more. Did I miss anything that you said?
Well, when I talk, you have to get rid of, forget about it. 70% of it. So
I forgot that.
Perfectly fine.
Okay.
That's my family does that with me all the time.
Do they? Okay.
I think we are supposed to supply Mary with times.
And does everyone
during the week?
6 to 8 p.m.
I prefer right now during the week only because of the transparency issue, that if we are trying to be,
that's fine.
I'm just.
And if you said that the weekends are looking tough anyway, then there are more weeknights than weekends.
And is 6 o'clock good for everyone, or would you rather start earlier and end earlier? Okay.
6 o'clock better?
It's a question of planning for me. So.
Yeah, you just have to have enough notice. I understand that. Yeah.
I'm thinking next week. Okay.
We have 72 hours notice.
I just want to make sure that we've given Dr. Yoshihara
time to
staff time to make it as productive as possible.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll just be coming in, throwing a skunk on the table, and leaving, and then there'll be everybody at the door. So we have to. This has to be thoughtful.
And we won't have the polling results next week.
But I'm trying to put the blinders on since she asked us to not I mean, that'll be the,
Well, I think a little creative resistance to just putting the blinders on.
that's a good term. I like
Might
that,
have
creative resistance.
Right,
That's-
I mean,
that's
we need
good.
to be, I want to be thoughtful about it, but,
No, that's a really good point.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to do ourselves, you know,
Yeah.
too much damage if we don't have to.
And White House Mosier and Godby might have ideas too. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, that's what their specialty is between them and Marin County office.
And we should tap into their expertise while we have them on the payroll.
Right, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this was an uplifting session,
Yeah.
but this was helpful. I really
Bloodbath.
appreciate the time. And just,
Thanks for putting it on the agenda. No, it's
yeah.
good.
Does anyone object to, I think there was one board policy that Michael, did you, I think I saw that you had a comment on one of them. Do you want to go through that, or can we put those off to? You think you got it straightened out? Okay.
He's going to go back and look
Okay.
at it. I had another comment on another policy, but it was more of it was pretty discreet. I'll follow up with David offline.
Okay.
You and David offline.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. So I'll ask David, are any of these board policies time critical, or do you think we can, am I missing something? Could we adjourn because it is 9:15 and
Yeah, we
I
can
just
bring
got
it
a big, you both look how I feel.
We don't have
I'm
to
tired, too.
approve any of them, right?
Pardon me?
We don't have to approve any of them. So I think.
So let's just, thank you again, former president, for
So we
pointing
could,
that out.
you could just ask if, well, I
Go
don't want
ahead.
to
What
step
would
on
you
your-
like to do, former president? No, chime in. I appreciate it. What is your idea? Just to,
Ask if anyone has questions on any of them.
oh, good. So then we still, very good. I like your way of thinking. Okay, then we have more progress. So I'll ask that, these are all first and second readings. There's only one second reading. And does anyone have any questions or comments they'd like to make about these
Yeah.
readings?
So I
Yeah.
do. So first, with one I just alluded to with respect to L,
Mm-hmm.
the budget one, naturally, I don't think it adequately addresses with respect to the amount of the reserve in particular. I don't think it addresses the situation of basic aid districts, because it's just written as if there's a cap of 10% on the reserve, which I think is not accurate. So, in other words, it was described accurately. I mean, the issue was raised in the description in the agenda, but it didn't track. It didn't track with the BP. So, but I know David is going to be looking into that. So my comment on K, this is regarding advertising and promotion, and it talked about things that were effectively are forbidden, right? In terms of promoting whatever they are, promoting private interests with using public facilities, et cetera, et cetera. But one of them I thought was really odd. It said the district is that if something promotes a position, if it positions the district on any side of a controversial issue, it should not be allowed. And so, if you pull up the, I thought it was very odd, to be honest. It's in the BP. If you look at 1325, if you look at the red line.
1325 BP?
BP, criteria for approval. Right, the superintendent shall not accept for distribution or allow on any school property any materials or advertisements that, and it talks about inciting to violence, lewd, blah, blah, everything seemed to be, prayer, proselytizing. But number 5, position the district on any side of a controversial issue. That seems like incredibly broad and vague and not very thoughtful. So I'm just curious, and I note that the citation 6144, when I scroll down to look at the various statutes, I don't know where that's from. I can't track that to a statute because none of the numbers of any of these statutes referred to are in the 6,000s, right? So I can't track that. So I don't know where that comes from. It seems like it's a little overzealous to me.
I can follow up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on that. This district has created controversial issues many years in the past, so I don't think we can go there because it's what we do.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Thank you for catching that. I didn't catch that. No, I agree.
Agreed. Very good. I
Fully
didn't see
agree.
that at all.
Those are my only two comments.
Those good ones. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I think.
L,
Okay.
Local Control Accountability Plan needs to be capitalized. L,
On L,
yeah,
3100?
3100, it's the board policy.
Okay.
We have the acronym in there, so those 4 words should be capitalized.
Okay. Got it.
And on M, I was wondering where the code of conduct will be on the websites once we presumably approve the revisions.
All right. We'll work with Tara on that.
I was wondering if it's also going to be on the district site. It mentions in the policy that it will be on each comprehensive site's website, but I'm wondering if it should also be on the district site.
Well, it says, I don't know whether this is accurate or not, but on the summary, it says you post it on each school's website or on the district website if a school doesn't maintain one. So we have websites, right, for each of our 5 schools.
Yes. So they would be by de facto there since they do maintain.
Yeah,
websites.
so we wouldn't need it on the district website.
I'm just wondering how an average person would find it, like where would it be?
Okay.
And do you want that as part of the BP or additional information at the next meeting? Just where would somebody find this code of conduct?
If it were notated or something
On the BP? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay.
There's also one that I've lost track. We lead in with, there were some changes in the wording on the board or the governance board as opposed to the Board of Trustees. And I can't remember which one of these hadn't caught up with our new way of stating that. So
The governing board is what they're all being changed to.
But there is one that has not made the change. And it was said
Right.
Board of Trustees, and I'm
Did it?
sorry.
Okay.
I
saw that too, Barbara.
Okay. I
We could do a search.
have it somewhere, but
Okay.
I'm sorry I don't have my hands on it now. That's
Okay.
all.
If you see it, let us know. If not, we'll try to look.
Okay.
Okay.
Those are all really good.
Oh,
Any
I know.
others?
I found it. I think it's 9150.
Oh, the student bylaws.
I think it's I think
Okay.
that's what it is. Governing board instead of
Okay.
Board of Trustees. I think that's the one.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Dun-da-da. Thank you, everybody.
See you in February, and if not sooner.
Drive safe. Sorry you have such a long drive.
Yeah.